I become the Demon King in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126 I want to open a magic school. Finally, a prominent figure arrived. Tom traced this person through the memories his master had instilled in him. Sir Humphrey Appleby, cabinet secretary, someone who could speak directly with the prime minister. What do you want? Tom began, reciting his lines from the script. Sir, don't you think this isn't a good place for a chat? Sir Appleby smiled warmly. How about some quiet afternoon tea? Where? Tom stared at him. Appleby suddenly felt the depth of those young eyes, brimming with the vicissitudes of life. A chill sank his heart, and he quickly changed his words. How about Downing Street? Yes. Tom stepped forward and grasped Appleby's hand. In front of hundreds of British soldiers and a throng of tourists in the distance, the two figures suddenly transformed into a twisting vortex, vanishing in the blink of an eye. The next moment, Tom and Appleby appeared at the door of the Prime Minister's residence. Appleby felt the urge to vomit, but as a seasoned bureaucrat, he had long since developed strong self-control, and he swallowed the vomit back. The guards at the Prime Minister's residence were so frightened by the sudden appearance of the two men that they were about to draw their guns, but Appleby was quick to react. Stop. Don't neglect our guests. The guards, recognizing Appleby, quickly withdrew. Sir, please, Appleby smiled, ushering Tom in. The Prime Minister is expecting you. Jim Hook hadn't expected his old rival to take him straight back to Downing Street. He had prepared to let him make contact first. Tom arrived in the reception room, but Huck, deliberately a little late, wore a warm smile, showing no disdain for the younger man. Welcome, sir. Welcome to Downing Street, Tom Riddle. Tom extended a hand and gently shook it, his manner perfunctory and far from enthusiastic. Despite a hint of displeasure, Huck's smile remained. Mr. Riddle, please take a seat. The two men took their seats, and suddenly a number of people filled the other seats, all prominent figures from various factions. No one was foolish. The sudden presence of someone who looked like a magician would be a source of curiosity. Even in ordinary times, the sudden appearance of a transcendent on the streets of the capital would be enough to alarm high-ranking figures, let alone the current world, which is anything but safe. Across the ocean, America has been plagued by a series of incidents over the past year or so, including the destruction of the White House twice. This has left the bald eagle devastated and forced to expand its military arsenal at all costs. Since the new century, Britain has learned to lie low, but no one is born a subordinate, and no one is willing to be a permanent underdog. They were once the great empire on which the sun never sets. Almost as soon as Tom deliberately appeared in front of Buckingham Palace, the British top brass had the same idea. They must obtain this person's power. This could be the opportunity for Britain to become great again. Mr. Riddle, may I ask why you were outside Buckingham Palace just now? Appleby took the responsibility of emceeing. Nothing, I just wanted to see an old friend. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like him at all. Tom recited his lines, but the age-old look in his eyes was easily captured by the veterans present. Such a sense of vicissitude, steeped in worldly experience, could never be found in a young person. Tom had become Lin Hao's contracted soul, allowing him to freely manipulate his memories, easily imbuing him with memories spanning decades and centuries. Furthermore, Voldemort, known for his precocious maturity and a melancholic demeanor, was adept at playing the role of an old man. His words startled the elderly men present. So you, Appleby exclaimed in disbelief, you knew Queen Victoria? We had a connection in her youth. Tom continued his lines, altering them slightly, removing the word wonderful. A mighty Voldemort, what woman would he need? Women aren't as interesting as Nagini. But these words were enough to fuel the elderly men's imaginations. So you, Appleby said, his tone a touch more respectful. How old are you? I forget, maybe over 500, 504 or 560. Tom shook his head, his expression nonchalant. Shit. 20 or 30 years of life don't matter to you, but we do. The elderly men present were all glaring, wishing they could devour Tom. His face clearly stated, I want immortality, too. Having laid out the bait, Tom sneered inwardly, waiting for further questions. Sure enough, the old men couldn't hold back. Someone immediately jumped out, snatching Appleby's assignment and asking flatteringly, Mr. Riddle, What brings you back to England? We can help you. Tom hesitated for a moment, then stated his master's request. I want to open a magic school. A buzzing sound erupted, and the room erupted in excitement. Every old man's expression was ecstatic. Tom had already cast a powerful spell and claimed to have lived for over 500 years. Did that mean that anyone who learned his magic could achieve immortality? Even if the effects varied from person to person, it was still a hope of immortality. Mr. Riddle, please let us help. Yes, you can choose the venue you need for the school, and we'll find it as quickly as possible. Any requirements for students? At this question, every old man stared at Tom, practically shouting, I want it, I want it. For now, we're only accepting children aged 8 to 12, as they're the most adaptable. The program will last 7 years, Tom replied. The old men were dejected, but soon recovered. They only wanted magical power, not actual school. At their age, who had the patience to spend years learning a subject they had no foundation in? They could just stuff their own children in and enjoy the benefits of magic right away. No problem. We'll advertise for you nationwide, if not internationally, to ensure you find students of sufficient caliber. We'll just advertise, and I'll have my own methods for selecting them, Tom said coldly. Not everyone is qualified to study magic. His expression froze, and the atmosphere froze. Tom glanced around, a smile playing on his lips. What? You seem a little embarrassed. No. Appleby reclaimed his post, shouting, We're honored that Mr. Riddle chose England to open a school. The old men gradually recovered from their disappointment and regained their composure. Indeed, they couldn't just turn down an opportunity that had been presented to them. It was all about qualifications. Not necessarily. It is really stupid to scare people away directly. Humphrey is right. It is our honor that you choose England. Please rest assured that we will fully cooperate with you to run this magic school. The Prime Minister's residence was chatting heatedly, but a group of people in black suits appeared on the street outside. After receiving the news, the agents of the London branch of SHIELD first asked Nick Fury for instructions, so they arrived late. No matter what they talked about, it will not count without the approval of America. This is the attitude of Nick Fury and a group of American Eagle elites. Please notify the gentleman who can do magic inside that SHIELD wants him to come over. The head of the London branch was very arrogant. The so-called five-country supervision is a joke. The agents of the U.S. Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency only remember the global law enforcement power they have. The fifth update. Chapter 127. The news spreads, and the Americans are arrogant. SHIELD's arrogant attitude shocked the British gentleman at the Prime Minister's residence. Unreasonable, Jim Hack exclaimed. This is 10 Downing Street. Who gave him the authority to block the door? Guards, remove them immediately. The head of SHIELD's London branch was indeed arrogant. Although he had Nick Fury's approval, he hadn't concealed his actions and unannounced, leading armed men to block the door of a government residence. This was extremely despicable. It can only be said that the Americans are accustomed to their arrogant style. At present, the country is facing a period of turmoil, and they are willing to use any means to strengthen their power. With Dongfang Bubei in front and the Asgardian aliens behind, and potential enemy countries possessing advanced weaponry, the situation is full of internal and external troubles. The exorcism sword technique was seen as a lifeline, and the East Factory's personnel were continuously expanded. Now, seeing a wizard with magical powers who could easily fight against armed men, how could they resist? Even Clay can have some tempers, let alone these old men who walked out of the twilight of the British Empire. The guards assigned to the Prime Minister's residence immediately surrounded the 3 black SHIELD vans. The head of SHIELD's London branch realized his own impulsiveness. While Britain might be America's junior brother, this was still the junior brother's pride. If there was any real need for a slap in the face, it wouldn't be his place. In the living room, Tom feigned slow reaction, glanced at Jim Huck, and said indifferently, What happened, Mr. Riddle? It's nothing to worry about. It's just a small matter, Huck smiled. So it's some ignorant fool who's here, Tom sneered, stood up, and vanished in a whirlpool. The old men were startled, then reacted. Go out and take a look, don't cause any trouble. Tom suddenly appeared at the residence's door and saw the SHIELD agents surrounded by guards. Without a word, he pulled out his wand. First, an Expelliarmus spell stripped the SHIELD agents of their weapons, followed by a disintegration curse that dismantled 3 reinforced black commercial vehicles. Finally, the wand emitted a signature green light. Avada, take the melon. This green light was even more deadly than the one overhead. After all, the green light overhead created life, while this one took it away. The green light enveloped the SHIELD London agents, and the black-suited operatives were completely defeated. Tom's audacious attack startled the elderly men who had rushed out of the official residence to watch the action. British bureaucrats, accustomed to arguing, were no longer capable of such reckless action at the slightest disagreement. What should we do? Won't the Americans take advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble? Why kill people directly? Call an ambulance and see if there's any hope of saving them, the elderly men whispered. It seems this country isn't suitable for a magic school. Tom sneered at them. No, Humphrey Appleby shouted hurriedly. Sir, we will definitely handle this. No one can take away the future of Britain. Appleby quickly cast his gaze at Jim Hack, gesturing frantically. Yes, sir, we will definitely open this magic school for you, Hack promised. The other old men gradually recovered from the shock of the SHIELD agents' deaths. Yes, it was just a few minor characters who died, at most, the argument would continue. Why not give them a grand opportunity for this? This is related to their longevity. What about America? They would kill their own sons if they dared to take away their chance of longevity. Don't worry, Mr. Riddle. We will select a site for you today and begin promoting it. Excellent, Tom nodded, a rare smile flashing. I need a place to live and I don't like noise. I'll arrange it for you right away. Appleby immediately stepped out of the crowd. Nick Fury, far away in Washington, quickly captured the footage of the scene, the strange magic leaving him silent for a long time. The shattering curse appeared to be the most destructive, but within reason, it wasn't as bizarre as the other two. Why can it disarm multiple people at once without even damaging the target's hands? Nick Fury struggled to understand the principle, but he understood the power of this magic. It rendered all individual weapons useless against it. But as for a long-range attack, the enemy had special magic similar to teleportation. The final green light seemed more like a direct attack targeting life force or the soul. If cover couldn't block the green light's power, even the thickest armor would be useless. Damn it, Nick Fury was troubled. The world was becoming increasingly dangerous, yet America couldn't muster the power to deal with it. No, we must find a way to get this wizard. If he couldn't, he told his masters to go directly to Britain to demand his help. Before Nick Fury could mobilize his master's power, several major British media outlets began to extensively publicize Tom's deeds in front of Buckingham Palace today and his immense magical powers, revealing a shocking piece of news. A powerful wizard is opening a magic school in England, recruiting students from all over the world. Audiences around the world were stunned for a moment upon seeing this news, then erupted in astonishment. No way? A magic school? Doesn't that mean I can learn magic? Great! I must master supernatural powers and become a superhero. Where can I sign up? Where can I sign up? I'll sell everything I have to go to magic school. Young people, in particular, were particularly excited. For over a year now, news of the emergence of extraordinary figures has been constantly breaking out in America, and while everyone has been enjoying the excitement, they can't help but fantasize about possessing supernatural powers themselves. Not only foreigners, but Americans themselves are even more anxious, having personally witnessed the increasingly chaotic environment. While Dongfang Bubei and the aliens targeted the White House, the eunuchs from the Western Factory, whose name Sadako had spread across America, are active throughout the country. These individuals aren't all self-disciplined. Many are leveraging their newfound power to commit crimes, some even organizing themselves, actively helping others to slay the demons and spread the exorcism sword technique. Lin Hao's plan to disrupt the United States with a book called The Book of the Sword of Exorcism has begun to bear fruit, and the situation in the United States has become increasingly chaotic. In the past, American officials only had to deal with guns and banned drugs, but now they have to deal with the chaos of no chickens. The elite eagles who deliberately relaxed their control over the grassroots and only cared about collecting taxes began to suffer the consequences of the chaos. Americans are only willing to believe in the power they possess. Only weapons and extraordinary abilities can give them the confidence to protect themselves and their families. Magic must be learned. The lower-level Americans only want to learn magic, and the big guys want more. This magic school must be opened in America. Difficult? Then don't do it. Here comes the first update. Chapter 128, Britain rises and backstabs America. Preparations are intensively underway in Britain for a new school of magic, and those with even a modicum of wealth around the world are rushing to buy tickets to the British Isles, eager to get in on the action. With recent tickets sold out, airlines are adding flights and raising fares overnight, but even with increases exceeding 300%, tickets are still hard to come by. Hotels and B&Bs in London and surrounding cities are equally fully booked, with owners beaming with joy. Even before the school is officially established, Britain is already reaping the benefits. This marks the first time in the world that a transcendental figure has publicly offered to impart extraordinary powers. Ordinary people, previously lacking access, finally have a chance to glimpse these powers. How could they not be thrilled? As netizens have remarked, even if one has to sell everything they have or even borrow from loan sharks, once they become transcendental, they no longer have to worry about repayments. Even if they had 10 times the courage to borrow from a loan shark, they wouldn't dare come to ask for repayment. The greatest fear of all is the absence of hope. Once hope is established, human beings can unleash unparalleled willpower. Witnessing such a heated scene, the British veterans finally witnessed firsthand the allure of the supernatural on ordinary people and truly realized the opportunities this magic school held for Britain. Now, they were determined to defend this school, no matter the cost. The Americans, however, were no pushovers. The Eagle immediately submitted a motion to the World Security Council, citing the killing of an SHIELD agent as an excuse to capture Tom Riddle and, incidentally, punish the disobedient British underlings. The World Security Council in Marvel's universe is a fictional organization consisting of only 5 member states, specifically responsible for leading and overseeing SHIELD in Captain America: Civil War. Steve Rogers destroyed SHIELD, disbanding the council along with it. Only Phil Coulson, relying on Nick Fury's support and funding from the United States, continued to maintain the lighthouse. This is why, in Captain America: Civil War, Natasha urged Steve to sign the Sokovia Accords, saying, "This isn't the original World Security Council, it's the United Nations." It was the same office, the same conference table. The American representative, stubbornly unwilling to replace the table himself, simply moved his chair aside, away from the crack he'd cracked the previous time. This is a provocation to SHIELD, a provocation to world security. America cannot tolerate the existence of such a threat. Tom Riddle must be arrested, or the authority of the World Security Council will be shattered. Tom had only publicly revealed his name at 10 Downing Street, but America knew it, as did the other 3 nations worthy of a seat at the table. This was the depth of the 5 largest players on Earth. If they couldn't even accomplish this, they had no right to sit at the table. Facing the American barrage, the Asian sat quietly, the Maoist representative sneered, the Gallic rooster's eyes gleamed, and only John Bull's expression was utterly grim. SHIELD, a mere agency, dared to send armed men into Whitehall and block the door to 10 Downing Street. They simply disregarded the empire of the fallen sun. The American representative finished speaking, only to find a silence. The 2 underlings, who always agreed, now had ulterior motives, one harboring ulterior motives, the other scowling. Glancing around, the American representative took the lead. "Everyone, what are your opinions? If you're not saying anything, then let's just vote." Only a single hand rose, and even the 2 underlings, who usually followed behind, remained unmoved. The arrogant Americans seemed to have forgotten that the underlings weren't thoughtless figures. Or perhaps they knew, but simply assumed they could suppress them with their brute strength, as they had so many times before. Unfortunately, the elite eagles had forgotten that even when they had offered a laundry detergent, they hadn't harmed the underlings' interests. Now, they were intent on snatching the spoils from their own mouths. "I have a proposal, too." John Bull ignored the Americans' murderous glare and spoke calmly. "In recent years, the board of directors has failed to adequately oversee SHIELD, spending large sums of money each year. Aside from a superficial financial report, we have no idea where the money went, what was done with it, or what results were achieved. We're discussing Tom Riddle's murder of SHIELD agent." The American representative knew before arriving that his younger brother would be unhappy about today's topic, but he never expected his British younger brother to dare to rebel. "Tisk tisk, since when has this conference room only allowed one voice?" the Russian representative sneered. Freedom of speech is the principle of this conference room. I remember that even the construction funds for this conference room are still in arrears with a certain country. John Bull was determined this time. Not only did he not intend to hand over Tom Riddle, he also wanted to strike back at the Americans. I propose forming a joint investigation team to enter SHIELD and conduct a comprehensive review and audit of the agency, including but not limited to its finances, personnel, facilities, armaments, technological achievements, and inventory of specialized items. Excellent, that's a good proposal, the American representative responded immediately. I fully agree. This should have been done long ago. I agree too. The Asian representative slowly raised his hand and said indifferently, since SHIELD is an international organization under the Board of Governors, it should be subject to international review and oversight. 3 votes in favor. Done, the American representative said confidently. The Gallic rooster pondered the matter and didn't raise his hand, but he also didn't object, abstaining from voting with silence. The outcome was already decided, so whether he expressed his opinion or not was irrelevant. Mimi, the American representative exclaimed, furious. He had originally planned to use the pretext of a SHIELD agent being killed to legitimately arrest Tom Riddle. After all, with Tom Riddle on British soil, America had no other excuse to interfere. But he didn't expect his proposal to be rejected and he was stabbed by his subordinate. Given Nick Fury's black love style, could he withstand scrutiny? What? The big Russian representative said, clearly fanning the flames. You want to object? Even if you object, it's useless. According to the rules of procedure, the veto power is only exercised on matters outside the Security Council, a symbol of the status and position of the 5 major players. However, matters involving the Security Council's internal management are decided by majority vote. Otherwise, even the annual budget plan wouldn't pass if just one country disagreed, even on funding issues, and the organization wouldn't survive. The purpose of establishing this platform is to facilitate communication and consultation, but if even this platform can't be maintained, where can we have consultation and discussion? The comprehensive review and audit of SHIELD is precisely an internal management issue of the World Security Council. Just now, the American representative proposed the arrest of the murderer under the pretext of the murder of SHIELD. This is also an internal management issue, because SHIELD is nominally affiliated with the World Security Council. Big Russian and Nanny have proposed reviews and audits of SHIELD many times before, but the Americans have always controlled the 3 votes, making the proposal impossible to pass. Now that Britain is rising and backstabbing the US, Mao and Nanny are naturally trying to take advantage of the situation. Asshole, the American representative stood up angrily and slammed his fist on the conference table. The gap left by the previous gap widened, and a clear cracking sound was heard on the table. Poor table, I'm afraid it won't be able to hold up this time. Mao's representative stared at the American representative and said, if you don't pay for the table this time, we will have to stand up next time for the meeting. That's good, so you don't have to stand up next time. Second update. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Blackbraised borrows money to settle the account. Nick Fury was stunned when he learned the World Security Council had approved a review and audit of SHIELD. He had never imagined that the sudden appearance of a magician on British soil would bring about such a miraculous transformation. But then he came to his senses, and it made sense. Britain's reluctance to give up this opportunity, coupled with America's resolute and brutal approach, naturally fueled rebelliousness among Britain's underlings. It was already a 2-on-3 situation, but now one of their own suddenly defected, catching the Americans completely off guard. We've bought you a week, using the excuse that the joint review team needs time to form. I don't care what you do, but you must clean up your mess. Pierce's clone feigned a warning to Nick Fury. He had already prepared the necessary incriminating evidence for his master, it was up to him when and how to use it. Thank you, Nick Fury said with a sincere thank you. Family matters are their own, and these matters under his own roof couldn't withstand scrutiny. Previously, Nick Fury, emboldened by the Americans' constant 3-2 advantage, brazenly treated SHIELD as a private American institution, engaging in numerous acts that benefited the Americans but harmed the interests of other nations. He was not only arrogant in private, but also outwardly unbearable. After a few minutes of gathering his composure, Nick Fury first approached his most trusted henchman, Phil Coulson. "I want you to eliminate all traces of SHIELD's actions 2 years ago within 3 days. Nick Fury's expression was stern and resolute. "If you can't clear it, blame it on the CIA or the FBI, whichever is more convenient." "Director, what's wrong?" Phil Coulson felt uneasy. The boss had recently inquired about any signs of renewed activity within SHIELD's Americas branch and had instructed him to maintain a close watch. Now, he was suddenly trying to get rid of it. "The board of directors has approved the review and audit plan for SHIELD, and the joint review team will arrive in a week." Nick Fury made no secret of the situation. At this point, he needed to mobilize all his resources to complete the matter. "How could this happen?" Coulson expressed confusion. "Wasn't it always rejected before, Alice?" Nick Fury sighed. "The London branch went too far this time. I told him to send for help, but he just went ahead and barricaded the door with weapons." Coulson remained silent. He knew his colleagues in the London branch were most likely taking the blame for this incident. A mere branch director wouldn't dare take such action without the boss's approval. "We can't handle the magician's affairs for now. Let the big guys up there worry about that. Right now, we have to focus on dealing with the review team in a week." Nick Fury gathered his emotions and gradually formed his thoughts. Personnel, facilities, and equipment were all easily managed. The difference between actual expenses and the reported expenses wasn't significant. Ghost payroll did exist, but it could be mitigated by slightly increasing the hidden benefits listed on the books. The UNEC brigade wasn't afraid either. The formation of this special operations team had already been reported to the council, and Nick Fury even provided each member state with a UNEC skilled in the complete set of exorcism sword techniques, ensuring equal treatment. "If we're going to plunder, let's plunder the entire world. There are publicly visible branches and bases on the grounds, some of which are in such disrepair that the original construction costs are no longer achievable. If all else fails, temporarily converting a few warehouses to cover the cost could offset the cost. Arming them would be even easier, as they would inevitably consume vast quantities of ammunition." Nick Fury hadn't tampered with large-scale equipment, knowing that they were SHIELD's true assets. Unfortunately, he didn't know that Hydra, in the shadows, had embezzled funds to modify the helicarrier for Project Insight. The scientific and technological achievements in the review project could be withheld from detailed data and source code under the pretext of confidentiality, which was a simple matter. Even if the review team included professional scientists, without detailed data, it would be impossible to infer the amount of research and development funds spent. The remaining special items were a bit more problematic, but not a major one. Nick Fury had always assumed that most of the special items beyond his control had already flown into the sun, leaving only the few he could control, which he had secretly withheld. Since the inventory was already cleared, if he wanted the physical objects, he'd have to go shoulder to shoulder with the sun. Financial audits were Nick Fury's biggest headache. Besides these manageable, substantial expenses, he'd also withheld a significant portion of his annual operating expenses to support the Skrull refugees. While the annual amount wasn't significant, it had accumulated over nearly 20 years to an astronomical sum, a figure that even selling Fury wouldn't be enough to cover. Any qualified accountant would have uncovered this flaw. Nick Fury had no hope of success. "Tony, I need your help." Unable to find anyone else, Nick Fury turned to a wealthy individual. "Lend me some money." Tony Stark was taken aback, but didn't ask, simply asking, "How much?" As the head of SHIELD, there was no need to ask for a loan unless it was a major problem. $2 billion, Nick Fury said. "Sorry, the number you dialed is powered off." Nick Fury's face was dark, and he changed the phone and contacted Jarvis directly. "Sir," he called again. Jarvis reminded Tony Stark, who turned around and went to work. "Get him out," Tony Stark said unhappily. "I'll just lend him tens of millions and treat it as sending away a homeless person." $2 billion? Why doesn't he rob a bank? The other party came to borrow money most likely because he encountered difficulties, and the money would most likely not be returned. After all, how much salary does Nick Fury get in a year? For the sake of his father's face, it's not impossible to support tens of millions, but he asked for $2 billion. Did he think he was the Federal Reserve? "Sir," he left a message. Do you want to listen to it? Jarvis asked. Delete. Tony Stark finally didn't harden his heart and clicked on the message. Tony, SHIELD is your father's legacy, and it's a powerful sword in America's hands. Now that the World Security Council is about to send a joint inspection team, the enemy's intention is clear: to destroy this sword. The world is becoming increasingly dangerous. You need help. Nick Fury's words silenced Tony Stark. The proud genius always placed America's security on his own shoulders, even boasting, "I single-handedly can maintain world peace." This wasn't just a rhetoric, it reflected his heart. Tony Stark was such a proud man. But reality constantly shattered his pride. The shadow of Dongfang Bubei hadn't yet dispelled, and the shadow of the nano-armor loomed over him, forcing him to pursue it day and night. Then came the powerful aliens, and now a magician. His proud genius refused to give in, but he gradually realized the need for companions, even if they were just for support. In the original story, he only realized this through the Avengers' joint fight against the aliens. Now, the immense pressure had made him realize it beforehand. Contact Pepper and have her negotiate. Try to get some valuable collateral back. Tony Stark believed that Black Salted Egg must have a lot of good stuff in his hands, and maybe he could bring it back to increase the power of the armor. Okay, sir. Chapter 130 Alnwick Castle and Hogwarts. While Nick Fury was distracted, the British had already selected several sites for Tom's magic schools. Surprisingly, or not, Tom spotted a familiar castle within. "Where is this?" he asked Humphrey Appleby, who stood beside him. Alnwick Castle, located in Alnwick, northern England, with a history of over 1,000 years, Appleby knew all the locations of magic schools by heart. Alnwick. Tom suddenly stood up, grasped Appleby's shoulders, and vanished in a whirlpool. The maids by the wall were accustomed to this, they were all professionally trained and had to endure it. The scene shifted, and Tom and Appleby appeared on the streets of Alnwick. Appleby, having gradually grown accustomed to the side effects of the spatial shift, took a deep breath to suppress the discomfort and immediately pulled out his phone to contact local authorities. A van soon arrived and took the two to Alnwick Castle. Looking at the quaint castle, Tom's face was filled with nostalgia. It was somewhat similar, yet not quite. It resembled Hogwarts in many ways, yet also in many ways. There were no distant mountains or dense jungles, only a castle perched on a mount in a verdant forest that looked ageless. Ancient castles, defended against foreign enemies, could not have been left with tall forests. There was no tranquil lake, only a small river circling the castle. Neither the dark forest nor the guardhouse were there. There were no unicorns, and no gamekeepers to be seen. It wasn't the same world after all. Tom felt a strange sense of sadness. Even a powerful Dark Lord couldn't transcend the barriers between worlds. Yet, a mysterious master had brought him from another world. Upon hearing the news, the senior officials of Alnwick politely asked the tourists to leave the castle and informed the castle's owner, who in Britain didn't know by now that a magic school would bring immense benefits to the country. If it were located on their own land, it would be a blessing from heaven. The resulting increase in land prices and tourism revenue was minor. The resulting favorable policies and even greater influence were the true wealth. This was a legitimate magic school. The only place in the world capable of producing extraordinary powers. What was the appropriate price for the land? Foolish. It's a free gift. That's all. So many people want to give it away, but they're not even qualified. The castle's owner hurried over, not daring to disturb Tom, lost in his remembrance. Instead, they hurried to Appleby's side. "Sir, is this Mr. Riddle?" the castle's owner asked with a nervous smile. If the magic school were to choose this place, he and his family would receive unparalleled benefits, even restoring the glory of centuries past. "Keep your voice down, sir." Appleby hadn't finished speaking when Tom's indifferent voice echoed, "This is it." The castle's owner froze, like Fan Jin after passing the imperial examination. "Congratulations, Mr. Riddle has chosen your family's estate." Appleby was a little disappointed. After all, he had asked his family to contribute several castles and manors. However, the urgent need for the magic school to open and enroll students was a consensus in England and a top priority. Although Appleby felt regretful, he didn't dare delay the important matter. 1. The castle owner finally realized, overjoyed. "Did you?" "Yes, sir, you chose Alnwick Castle." Appleby immediately produced a document he had brought with him and handed it over. "You may choose to retain ownership, but you must consent to any modifications you make to the castle." "No, We would like to donate Alnwick Castle to Mr. Riddle. After all, as a scion of a prominent family, he had some understanding. When doing a favor, you have to do it right the first time to maximize the benefits. It's better not to be stingy. Giving away a castle, in return, is an opportunity for the family's rise. Besides, they should always consider our family first when recruiting students, right? Tom turned to look at the middle-aged man and nodded, clearly pleased. Okay, then, sign the gift documents. Appleby was well prepared. While he was signing the documents, Tom pulled out his wand, waved a circle across the lawn, and a clod of earth levitated, carrying him up into the air. Then, a white light emanated from the tip of the wand, so intense that even in daylight, it was dazzling. A transparent film of light suddenly appeared in the sky, spreading outward in a spherical shape, and in a moment, it enveloped the entire Alnwick Castle. The magical shield was established, flickering twice, and then disappeared. Tom returned to the ground, and the lawn returned to its original state. Ignoring the other's surprise, he spoke coldly, "Announcement has been issued. Enrollment for the magic school is about to begin." Appleby nodded in surprise, but then quickly realized what was happening and pressed on. "How will admissions be conducted? Will there be an exam?" "No, magical bloodlines can't be discovered through exams." Tom suddenly revealed a mysterious smile. "Children on Earth simply need to receive a letter stamped with a Hogwarts seal, signed by their guardians agreeing to their admission. Holding the letter will bring them here." "Is Hogwarts the name of the magic school?" Appleby demanded. "Is the letter a special key, like the magic you cast earlier?" These questions were crucial to the upcoming press conference, so they needed to be clearly addressed. "That's right. No matter which country you are in, as long as you hold the letter, you can reach Hogwarts," Tom replied. "By the way, Hogwarts doesn't charge tuition, but you'll be responsible for students' daily room and board." Appleby was taken aback, but quickly agreed, "Don't worry, it's just a small matter." While recruiting students from around the world and spending money to train extraordinary people from other countries, it also serves to expand Britain's influence. Back then, the Americans exploited the Qing dynasty's indemnity to acquire international students, ultimately nurturing the first generation of banana people without spending a penny of their own money, a legacy that plagued them for over 100 years. Now, in the age of extraordinary people, every extraordinary warrior is invaluable. Even if they come from other countries, Britain may not be unable to retain them. They're just 8 or 10-year-old brats, perfect for brainwashing. Following the script set by his master, Tom added, "At the start of term dinner, I'll provide 3 magic potions, one for the person who donates the most." Everyone who heard this gasped, and the temperature seemed to drop a little. "Potion?" Appleby asked, clutching his trembling hand against his throbbing heart. "What does it do?" "Nothing else." Tom's voice remained calm, his words thundering. "It just makes you younger." A hissing sound echoed throughout Alnwick Castle. The temperature dropped several degrees, and then a blazing glow filled the air. "We'll immediately arrange for the news of Hogwarts' founding to be announced to the world," Appleby promised, pressing his chest firmly. This wasn't just the founding of the magic school, it was a chance to live for decades longer. Once the news got out, the old guard in England would surely rally to overcome any obstacle. Even if the Americans wanted to start a war, they would fight. After all, they weren't the ones dying. "Go ahead. I need to make some renovations to the campus." Tom waved. Appleby bowed and dashed towards the distant car. At this moment, he was even faster than the youngsters. Fourth update, guess what Director Lin will do to make them younger? Chapter 131, The descendants of robbers and thieves are not worthy of learning noble magic. In this universe, Christmas Eve 2009 was destined to be a day that will be remembered in history. The first known school of magic in human history was officially inaugurated, and global admissions began that same day. Every child between the ages of 8 and 12 in the world has the hope of receiving an invitation to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Humphrey Appleby declared at the press conference, smiling broadly as he greeted the gazes of the world. However, learning magic is not an easy task. It requires children to possess magical talent. "Sir, Mr. Appleby, what exactly is magical talent? However, how is this talent tested? Can you guarantee a fair selection process?" "I still believe that only America can guarantee a fair and public selection process." Ignoring the 2 wailing losers behind him, Appleby smiled and explained, "I'm sorry, but the assessment of magical talent rests entirely with Mr. Riddle. I trust he will select qualified students." The implication was clear. It is our wizards who select the students, not you who choose the teachers or the school. If you have the guts, look elsewhere." As he spoke, Appleby produced a folded piece of letter paper. The front was stamped with a red wax seal, emblazoned with a crest representing Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. "Please look, everyone. This is the invitation letter from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Appleby held up the letter, the camera zooming in on it so viewers around the world could clearly see its exterior. He unwrapped it before the eyes of the entire world, revealing a sheet of yellowed parchment with a form written on it, leaving the name blank. "Dear Mr. Ms. XX, we are honored to inform you that you have been accepted as a student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Appleby recited the form with deep emotion, more immersive than a speech at a cabinet meeting. "If your parents, or guardians, consent to your admission, please sign, or place your fingerprint, in the space below. Magic will transmit your family's feedback back to the school. Once signed, this invitation letter will serve as a special key. Please hold it firmly, and magic will transport you directly to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." After his speech, Appleby highlighted Britain's support for the school. After consultation with Mr. Riddle, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry will not charge any fees. Our government will provide free food and lodging for every student. This was just rhetoric. It was clearly Tom Riddle's request, but Appleby's precise words gave the impression that it was something the British government had fought for. Sure enough, reporters from around the world applauded enthusiastically at the press conference, and the impoverished families in front of the screen finally felt a glimmer of hope. Previously, they had never believed such a thing could happen to them, simply watching the excitement. Even if they were lucky enough to be selected, they couldn't even afford the travel expenses. Of the countless countries on Earth, not all have sound governments that invest in those at the bottom after they demonstrate their value. Many are in turmoil, devoid of order and driven by a cannibalism system. They won't invest in you, or they'll try to steal your opportunity. If they find they can't, they might even destroy you outright, with a sinister mentality of "if I don't have it, you won't have it either." But things are different now. This school seemed to have taken all of this into account. There was no tuition, and no long journeys were required. Once selected, students could depart immediately. Even if neighbors noticed someone was missing, they could tell everyone about it without worrying about any shady people, as they would only hide their jealousy and flock to the school with warm smiles. Who would dare to offend a family destined to produce a transcendental being? After giving a detailed explanation, Appleby glanced at his watch and smiled. Mr. Riddle's scheduled time has arrived, and the invitation letters have been sent to the selected children. Please discuss your admission with your parents and decide whether to enroll. A friendly reminder, the enchantment on the letters will expire after 24 hours, so please decide quickly to avoid missing out. Tomorrow afternoon, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry will hold the grand opening ceremony and the first class. Friends from all over the world are welcome to visit. Tonight, on Christmas Eve, the school will hold a start-of-term dinner. He didn't mention it again. He couldn't tell the world that a life-extending artifact would be present at the dinner, could he? Unfortunately, even if he didn't say anything, the people on Earth who should have heard the news got it anyway. America's elite eagles were practically exploding with rage. Why? Why can't we seize the magic school? We're so controlled now, even our voices have shrunk. How can we seize it? The only way to seize it is to start a war. The key is, even if we go to war, we might not get it. That wizard seems hostile to America. At this point, someone with inside knowledge revealed the attitude Tom had conveyed to the British High Command. Because he thinks we, the descendants of bandits and thieves, aren't worthy of learning noble magic. Fuck, bitch, how dare he? Why wouldn't they dare? If you have the guts, don't pretend to be an old English noble and attend a Christmas dinner, Alice. Force will inevitably bring retaliation. Our technology is incapable of defending against special magic, and they have something we desperately need. We can only cooperate. Why doesn't America have its own magicians? Has God no longer blessed America? We didn't rely on God to get to where we are today. The last 2 years have been truly fraught with disaster. I don't know what's going on. Achoo. Lin Hao sneezed and touched his nose, puzzled. Can I still catch a cold now? No, someone must be scolding me. Just then, the Den Mushi rang. Zheng Xian's face appeared on the video projection. Okay, are you scolding me? Lin Hao was always quick to seize the initiative. He knew Zheng Xian contacted him now because he was probably under too much pressure. How are you going to end this mess? Zheng Xian stared at him intently. It didn't take him long to think. The moment Tom Riddle first appeared, Zheng Xian was certain he was Lin Hao's fabrication. Let's play it out. We'll have kids from China selected too. I guarantee they'll all be members of the SHIER. Lin Hao had already thought this through. When do you plan to open this school? Zheng Xian asked again. What's the rush? The first class will graduate in 7 years at the earliest. Lin Hao was confident he could control this situation. In 7 years, I might even be able to rebuild the High Heaven Palace. Why would I be afraid of a few little wizards? Zheng Xian was on his side, anyway, and would help him manage the internal pressure. Apart from Zheng Xian, no one knows the real boss behind this magic school. Zheng Xian's pressure comes from the arms race. And what about the dinner? What are you planning to do? 5th update. Please ask for next month's monthly ticket in advance. Chapter 132 The Chosen Child. On Christmas Eve afternoon, Peter Parker and young Aunt May were decorating the house. Peter had already donned his full Santa costume, and Aunt May joined in the fun, donning a sexy Christmas outfit. A red dress with a white collar and skirt, cinched at the waist and rounded out the bust, red and white over the knee cotton socks, and playful antlers on her head. Unfortunately, the only man in the house didn't appreciate the decor. He was still toiling away on a Christmas tree he'd found in another neighborhood. Raising a family alone was a difficult task for Aunt May, but Peter had always been sensible, never competing with his classmates. He often found useful items from the outside, tinkering with them and using his natural handyman skills. Aunt May was equally pleased with Peter's thoughtfulness, and she wanted even more to give her child a better future. Hey, what's this? Peter, busy as he was, suddenly found a letter under the Christmas tree. Dear Mr. Peter Parker. Peter picked up the letter and noticed the words written on the front. Then, looking at the back, the fold was covered in red wax, with a crest printed on it. Atop it was a knight's helmet, with 4 animals, a lion, a snake, a badger, and an eagle, with a capital H between them. Oh my God, Peter suddenly exclaimed, it's the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry invitation letter. Britain's promotion of the Wizarding School wasn't limited to Christmas Eve. Even before Tom Riddle appeared in England and announced the establishment of a wizarding school at 10 Downing Street, a massive publicity spree had already begun. After learning the exact name of Hogwarts from Tom, they provided daily updates on all things wizarding. Reuters and the BBC had long mastered the art of traffic, consistently dominating the global information network. Therefore, nearly all eligible children around the world knew that a wizarding school was about to open and enroll. By the time Britain released the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry invitation letter template and announced that it had already been sent out on Christmas Eve, children around the world were eagerly anticipating the magical school's arrival. Thousands of children around the world were already rummaging through their homes, fearing they'd missed something. Compared to the other enthusiastic children, Peter was much calmer, with a kind of if I get it, I'm lucky, if I lose it, I'm doomed. He imagined a future embracing the technological prowess of Iron Man, striving for a full scholarship to MIT. But that didn't mean he wasn't thrilled when he actually received a letter. After all, what child doesn't have those wonderful fantasies? Aunt May, Peter, dressed in a baggy Christmas suit and ill-fitting leather boots, excitedly ran to Aunt May, holding up the invitation letter and beaming, I got an acceptance letter from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Aunt May was startled at first, then she looked at the envelope before her, recalling what she had just seen on TV. Then, her mouth opened slightly, gently covering it with her hand. Oh my God. Did you really get it? Yes, Peter excitedly pointed at the old Christmas tree he'd found and said with a smile, I found it under the tree. It must be a gift from Santa Claus, silly boy. Christmas Eve is tomorrow, and Santa hasn't started work yet. Aunt May patted Peter's head, calming him down. Open it and take a look. Peter quickly tore open the envelope and took out the letter inside. Dear Mr. Peter Parker, we are honored to inform you, the format was exactly the same as the one advertised in the news, with a blank space for the Guardian's signature at the bottom. Yes, it's true, Peter jumped with joy. At this moment, his dream of Iron Man went to hell. Peter Parker was going to learn the magic. On the one hand, there was an uncertain future, and on the other, there was an opportunity within reach. And the opportunity was even greater than the potential benefits in the future. Not only children, but even adults faced with this kind of choice would be pragmatic. Even children could tell the difference between a parent's promise of I'll keep your New Year's money for you and give it to you when you grow up, and the New Year's money they could get right now. Unlike Peter's excitement, Aunt May began to seriously consider whether to sign the agreement. Ultimately, reality got the better of her. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry offered free tuition, free board and lodging, and taught the wonders of magic, so there was no need to worry about employment. As for safety, it was an officially accredited British school of magic, not a human trafficking ring. Ever since the news of the school broke, a strong sour tone had permeated American public opinion, and even Aunt May, who usually cared little about national affairs, could sense it. Something so valuable that even her own country was vying for it must be legitimate. "Peter, do you want to go?" Aunt May finally asked Peter about his intentions. Peter, sensible, was about to nod eagerly, but tilted his head in thought for a moment. "If I go to England, I won't be able to see Aunt May every day." Before any sadness could set in, his optimistic nature took over. "But I can learn spatial magic. Once I master it, I'll be able to return in a flash." He had no idea how difficult it would be to learn apparition. "Okay, I'll sign for you then." Aunt May found a pen and signed for Peter. After signing, a flash of light suddenly flashed on the letter. "Wow, it's truly magical," Aunt May exclaimed, looking at Peter with reluctance. "Peter, when are you leaving? You can't miss tomorrow's opening ceremony." "Aunt May, do you want to go too?" Peter asked excitedly. Young Aunt May wanted to go, but thinking of the recent skyrocketing airfare and hotel prices in England, she could only shake her head helplessly. "I probably can't go." If it had been the first few days after the news of the magic school's establishment broke, Aunt May could have gritted her teeth and afforded it. But now that the school has officially opened, airfare and hotel prices have skyrocketed again, reaching 100 times their normal price. Why is this happening? Because some unwilling adults are trying to act like children. They plan to take advantage of their last chance to personally seek a chance outside Alnwick Castle. Airfare's easy enough, it's just a matter of increasing the number of flights, but hotel rooms are completely sold out. Even the most expensive presidential suites have seen a surge in prices, prompting large groups to buy them. Ultimately, even unlicensed apartments and houses in England began secretly welcoming tourists. In short, even if they had to sleep standing up and go without food or water, they had to fight for this last chance. "Oh, I see," Peter, understanding, immediately understood the reason. "Don't worry, I'll bring my camera and film it for Aunt May." "Okay." A relieved Aunt May leaned over, hugged Peter and gave him a kiss. "I'm going to call Gwen and tell her I was chosen," Peter said proudly, "so she can keep bragging." Go ahead, Aunt May smiled and waved. Peter ran to the phone and called Gwen Stacy's house. "Hello, is this Gwen?" As soon as the line connected, Peter couldn't wait to speak. "What? How did you know I was chosen for Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry?" Gwen's eyes twitched on the other end of the line, and just imagining how cocky she was enough. "Really? Then don't use my stationery in your magic classes anymore. Hogwarts will provide you with it, of course. I won't need to borrow yours anymore." Peter's smile faltered. "What do you mean by magic classes? I forgot to tell you, I got my acceptance letter too," Gwen said calmly. Peter's face paled. Was he going to have to endure Gwen's brutal bullying in class again? "By the way, Ned got it too." Gwen delivered another light blow. Peter cried out. "So casual." Gwen took a deep breath and let out a sinister grin. "Peter, do you think the magic school has a magic combat class? I'm looking forward to fighting you." Peter finally remembered Gwen's incredible athletic talent and the fighting skills she'd learned from her father, the sheriff. In the past, when the three of them were out on their adventures, they'd inevitably run into some low-class thugs, but Gwen single-handedly took down those thugs, who were several years older than them. Peter, before the spider bite, had always been frail. Aunt May could only ensure his health, unable to afford expensive supplements. Although Peter constantly claimed to be the team leader, his combat prowess was actually inferior to that of Ned Leeds, who was much more robust. Ahem, Peter coughed quickly, feigning weakness and a smile. "That's not what I meant. Right." Peter finally found an excuse. "Ned shouldn't have told me, the captain, first." "That's really wrong, haha. If your phone wasn't so intermittent, maybe you could get a call from him or me," Gwen said, rolling her eyes. "Oh," Peter faltered, grinning. "Really? You already called?" "I'm busy. Let's talk later." Gwen hung up and walked back to the dining room. George Stacy had been silent for a while, looking at the letter on the table. "Gwen, do you want to go?" "George, again respecting the child's wishes, said, "Dad, do you want me to go?" The precocious Gwen threw the question back. George smiled and shook his head helplessly. This daughter is becoming more and more opinionated. "Let's go. Dad may be in danger," George sighed lightly. "When you go to magic school, Dad doesn't have to worry about your safety." "Is it because Dad has to do the right thing too?" Gwen couldn't help but worry. George nodded silently. Gwen was silent for a moment, and finally nodded in agreement. "Then I will go. I want to learn magic and become a powerful magician, so that I can help Dad do the right thing." Too lazy to split it up, the first update is here. Chapter 133. 70% of children come from poor families? From the press conference on Christmas Eve, when the invitations were officially released, to Christmas Day the following day, children from all over the world began to arrive on the open lawn outside Alnwick Castle. Some were dressed in extravagant attire, others in simple attire, some dragging suitcases, and some simply arrived empty-handed. Regardless, upon receiving their invitations, all the children gazed excitedly at the nearby castle. "Dear children, come and change into your Hogwarts uniforms. The celebrations are about to begin." Officials arranged by the local British government warmly welcomed the future wizards. Gwen, Ned, Peter Parker, already dressed, approached Gwen Stacy and Ned Leeds, who had just appeared. "Why are you here so late?" "I arrived yesterday." Gwen examined Peter's attire, a long, black, hooded robe that covered his entire body, with wide sleeves. He wore shiny leather boots, a white shirt, and a plain white tie with no logo on the chest. "Is this a school uniform?" Gwen wondered. Peter glanced down, a sudden realization dawning on him. "Hogwarts has 4 houses. The receptionist said there's a house division ceremony upon entering. Once you're assigned to a house, your tie and lining will change color, and you'll have your own house emblem on your chest. Isn't that amazing?" "Really?" Ned frowned. "What if we can't be assigned to the same house?" "No problem, it's still the same as before. I'm the captain, and I'll be there for you." Peter patted Ned on the shoulder, acting like a gang leader. Gwen ignored him and walked to the reception desk to register and collect her uniform. The area in front of the castle gates has been converted into a permanent reception area, featuring retro architecture and a rich medieval feel. The local Alnwick and Edinburgh authorities have invested heavily in providing attentive care for future wizards. New buildings outside the castle house, changing rooms, bathrooms, a dining hall, and a row of temporary accommodations for children arriving early. This is the first cohort, so they're using local staff. Next year, former students will be volunteering. Orientation is quite interesting. As the deadline neared, the local receptionist finally discovered a harsh reality. Children from impoverished families were disproportionately represented. Hogwarts admitted only 1,600 students in its first class, but over 70% of them came from impoverished backgrounds. Don't underestimate these receptionists. They were specially selected by the British authorities, and they would use the utmost enthusiasm during these 24 hours to extract personal information from the young children. They had no ill intentions, they were simply soliciting information. Once they had the information, the British authorities would immediately dispatch agents to the children's homes to begin contacting and investing in them. After all, admissions were entirely handled by Tom Riddle, and they had no idea which children would be accepted. The final tally shocked them. Over 70% of the students are impoverished. The head of the receptionist was actually an MI6 agent. Upon receiving the results, the agent's brow furrowed. It was surprisingly easy to determine a child's background. While demeanor and speech might be disguised, the children's clothing, small scars on their bodies, and the obvious features of their nails, heels, and teeth simply couldn't be concealed. The children of the wealthy are pampered from childhood, even having a coterie of maids and servants to tend them. Scars and calluses are almost unseen on their bodies. Their nails are meticulously trimmed, preventing signs of ingrowth from overcutting, and certainly no onychomycosis. Growing up in luxury, their teeth are minimally worn, neatly arranged, and perfectly white. This is due to their regular visits to expensive dentists. Children from poorer families, or even those from modest means, simply don't enjoy these privileges. They don't get their teeth trimmed until they are healthy, and daily playtime with friends inevitably leads to injuries. Boys, especially, play in the mud, often leave dirt between their nails. To the professional MI6 agents, the backgrounds of these children are instantly recognizable, even if their families dress them in new clothes for the occasion, often pre-dressing them. The class divide remains stark. "This isn't a good sign," the MI6 officer murmured. "But we can't control it." A subordinate beside him pulled out another form containing student information. "At least most of the wealthy families in this country have children selected. What about America?" the leader asked hurriedly. "How many?" The subordinate knew what the boss was asking about, but could only shake his head helplessly. Not a single one from the top 10 conglomerates was selected. "There are only 200 students from America, all from ordinary families, only 200, the leader held up a form and smiled with a sly glee. "We have over 300, and France has over 100 too, which adds up to over 500. There are 600 in all of Europe, and only 200 from America." It's obvious that Mr. Riddle's previous statement wasn't a joke. The subordinate also had a gloating smile on his face. "The strangest thing is, that Eastern country has a full 300 people. Russia took 200, and the remaining 300 came from other countries." "So many," the leader frowned. "Britain contributed both land and manpower, and worked tirelessly to secure over 300 places. And that Eastern country didn't do anything, and yet it took 300 in one fell swoop? This wizard is very interesting. He actually has such a keen sense of the international situation, but thinking about it, it seems normal. After all, he has lived for more than 500 years and witnessed the vicissitudes of history. His vision must be good. But the fact that the country in the East took away 300 people in one go still made the proud British gentlemen unhappy. But they dared not express their opinions. If they angered the wizard, he could just take the students and move to another place. Which country on earth could not provide a venue and the ability to provide food and accommodation for more than 1,000 people? "Should we spread the news?" the subordinates asked the person in charge quietly. "Spread it. They will know it soon anyway," the person in charge smiled. "Wouldn't it be better to get an extra allowance? The target of the message is America. They are not traitors or moles, but the connection between MI6 and the CIA is too deep. The British top brass is even numb to the status quo." So the American Eagles were not surprised to be angry. In fact, they had gradually discovered the truth in the past 20 hours. Because the consortiums in various places were conducting self-investigations within their families, and as a result, not a single kid got the so-called magic school admission invitation letter. Second update. Chapter 134. I am only 6 years and 360 months old. Why don't you choose me? What the? This is a blatant humiliation of America. Sanctions. Sanctions must be imposed. Unsurprisingly, the American elite Eagles were furious when they discovered that none of their children had been selected. They didn't necessarily care whether they learned magic or not, but this blatant discrimination stung their pride. Never in modern times had anyone humiliated the noble elite Eagles in this way. But despite their anger, they were faced with a harsh reality. With Britain's younger brother defecting, France, quietly reaping significant benefits, would undoubtedly adopt an ambiguous attitude. The entire European population, combined, would have tripled theirs. If one excluded the impoverished and only counted the wealthy families, the number of European elites selected was a figure the elite Eagles couldn't match, because they were zero. This meant they couldn't use normal international platforms to confront Britain, leaving them with only a bitter war. And right now, the country most eager for war was undoubtedly Russia, armed with its nano-armor. Armed with nano-armor, arc reactors, and the legacy of the fallen empire, coupled with recent hardships, Russia, from top to bottom, is simmering with resentment, seeking revenge for a 20-year-old conflict. The elite Eagles are cautious about starting a war. Sanctions? What sanctions? Energy or technology? If we dare to choke off energy, all of Europe will fall to Russia. If war breaks out, we'll have enemies all over the Atlantic. Just sit back and watch. Over 1,000 magicians enter that damned school every year. 7 years from now, the first batch will graduate. Europe will have 600, and will only have 2. Our disadvantage will only grow. Fighting is impossible, and dragging it out is like cutting flesh with a blunt knife, only exacerbating the pain. Fuck, aren't there other magicians in this world? The American elite Eagles unsurprisingly posed this soul-searching question. The leaders debated for a long time, but remained undecided. Going to war would be an uncertain outcome. Even the aliens who burned down the White House could get involved, adding insult to injury. Use all available resources to secure the 200 future wizards within the country. Furthermore, announce to the world that any family accepted into the magic school will receive green cards for all members, along with housing, jobs, and substantial bonuses. I simply refuse to believe the American dream, promoted for centuries, will lose its effectiveness. The big money strategy has become the last straw for America's elite, but it remains potent. The American dream still holds a tenacious allure. Many families among the 300 students from underdeveloped countries have immigrated to the United States, attracted by the conditions offered by the Americans. These are the effects of America's initial manipulation, which brings us back to the area outside Alnwick Castle. The 24 hours are drawing to a close, and Hogwarts, the world's first public school of magic, is about to open its mysterious gates. After Tom Riddle selected this location, he has been renovating the castle alone. Even the British leadership remains unaware of its current state. But before the gates open, a large crowd of young people from around the world lines the road leading to the castle, holding banners and shouting in support. Why do they only want children between 8 and 12? I'm only 6 years, 360 months old. I'm still a baby. I'm only 5 years, 480 months old. I'm still a child. I want to go to magic school, too. Principal Riddle, please, take me in. This side was full of boys, and the girl across the way was even more arrogant. Principal Riddle, I'm a baby too. If you don't believe me, come check it out. I promise you won't have the chance to ask. Principal Riddle, I can sleep in a crib. These older boys and girls, almost in sync, changed into school uniforms, sailor suits, and some, even more outrageously, even children's clothes. Pacifiers, selling pacifiers, professional baby products, helping you connect with babies. A salesperson suddenly appeared in the line, carrying a suitcase filled with all kinds of baby goods. There were pacifiers, bottles, baby hats, belly bands, and even diapers. The boys and girls lining the street exchanged glances, then immediately rushed to the salesperson. Pacifier, give me a pacifier, thanks, 10 pounds, the salesperson beamed. Fuck, you're grabbing me, this is your chance. Once the school gates open and close, you'll have no chance at all. The salesperson clearly understood sales psychology. The babies paused for a moment, then immediately began scrambling. Give me one, I want a bottle, baby hat. The people ahead had snapped up all the good stuff, leaving only diapers behind. That's a bargain, 1 pound apiece, the salesperson said, somewhat unsure. He'd underestimated the baby's determination to achieve extraordinary opportunities. Let me have it. Worst case scenario, they'll wear their underwear outside. For a dream, what's the point to face? After donning their new gear, the scene along the street changed dramatically. A chorus of sobs and cries filled the air. Oh my god, the Lun family is really a baby. Principal Riddle, come and see from the highest point of the castle. Tom Riddle watched the chaos outside, wishing he could clear it out with a fiery blaze. The people of this world were truly shameless. Time was up, and it was time for Hogwarts to officially open its doors. Tom raised his wand, and a red curtain suddenly floated into the sky, a vast curtain covering the entire castle. Even the surrounding sky dimmed. It was clearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it felt like dusk at sunset. With a crisp explosion, the red curtain suddenly ripped apart, revealing strands of colorful ribbons that fluttered in the air. The ribbons danced in the sky, transforming into symbols in a three-dimensional dynamic scene of light and shadow. As the colors shifted, the light and shadow began to interpret the origins of Hogwarts and the history of the four houses. The symbols became text, providing detailed introductions. 10 minutes later, all the ribbons exploded into even smaller fireworks, blooming in the sky. At that moment, Alnwick Castle, sealed for days, finally opened its gates. 2 rows of stone sculptures, resembling lifelike cavalry, marched in unison. As the sculptures moved, a wide red carpet slowly stretched out from the castle. Oh my god, is this magic? Amazing. Stone can move, I want to learn magic so badly. Once I learn, my toys will move on their own, and I won't have to use any more force. A busta girl, her eyes sparkling, pleaded, Principal Riddle, are you really not considering me? All students, line up and enter the school. Riddle's calm voice echoed throughout the castle. Quick, children, line up in order of height. While children in some countries require immense effort from reception staff to line up, children in one country spontaneously gather together and form a line as quickly as possible. Yes, children in this country undergo marching drills starting in kindergarten, a practice that once amazed the West. Hundreds of millions of troops in a certain country practiced military formations daily. So many Asian children, the sight of 300 Asian faces shocked the onlookers. An Asian tourist nearby immediately jumped out and shouted, "Children, are you Japanese?" The question was addressed in Japanese, but the children remained expressionless, not bothering to respond. The Koreans among the tourists immediately burst into laughter. "Idiots, they must be Korean." After retorting in English, the Koreans switched to their native tongue and continued, "Children, are you Korean?" Perhaps annoyed, a loud child among the group turned and cursed, "Get lost. We're all Chinese." Many tourists couldn't understand Chinese, but the Japanese and Koreans who had just popped up could tell the question wasn't their native language, and it felt very familiar to them. A terrifying speculation then arose. Only these kids look Asian. Could it be that no children from our country were selected? Realizing this, the Japanese and Koreans among the tourists began to stir. They quickly mobilized their compatriots to run around, shouting from the outside of the chaotic queue, "Children, are any of you Japanese or Korean?" After shouting their way around, no one responded. The Japanese and Korean tourists present were in uproar. "Damn, not a single Japanese child, Ash. There's not even a single Korean child. This is a conspiracy. This is a conspiracy." Upon discovering this grave situation, the Japanese and Koreans abandoned their pretense and immediately gathered together, shouting loudly into Alnwick Castle. "There's something fishy going on in the admissions process. This is unfair. Why are the only Asian students Chinese? Are we, the Yamato people, worse than the sick men of East Asia? The entire universe belongs to us Koreans. Why can't we let our children learn magic?" Frankly, facing such unfair treatment after studying abroad, these Japanese and Koreans had the courage to speak out. This is far superior to the many idiots who bury their heads in the sand or keep saying, "If you're patriotic, don't go abroad." You're unwilling to speak out about the injustice, and you expect others to actively curry your favor? Unfortunately, the Japanese and Koreans have no idea who is behind this situation, and their resistance to injustice is doomed to be suppressed. Streams of light flew up from Alnwick Castle and landed accurately on the troublemakers and big sticks. In the blink of an eye, these people turned into pigs and dogs in front of tourists from all over the world, and began to hum and bark non-stop. The transformation effect will disappear after one day, and those who make more noise will remain transformed for the rest of their lives. Tom's cold voice echoed outside the castle. The tourists who came to watch the ceremony were no longer noisy. Even the older men and women who were vying to be babies shut up. The power of magic is so terrifying. It's a pity that this magic school couldn't appear earlier. 8,000 words. Chapter 135. This magic school has a very complicated composition. Drums and gongs blared, firecrackers exploded, red flags fluttered, and a sea of people filled the air. Except for the last one, there was nothing in sight. After finally lining up, the children from other countries finally stepped onto the red carpet amid the scornful and impatient gazes of the other 300 Asian children. The first group to line up marched to the front of the line. Neither the British officials nor the tourists from around the world could object. The difference was truly profound. They had been waiting quietly on the red carpet for over 10 minutes, while the staff here were still shouting and yelling. The British locals were naturally humiliated, but they hadn't known in advance which children would be selected, leaving them no time for rehearsals. They could only privately discuss asking Mr. Riddle to let them know next year, or at least bring the British children over for half a day of training, to avoid embarrassment in front of the world. After the line was barely in place, the children marched towards the castle gates. At that moment, they were the center of attention, bearing the brunt of the envy and hatred. As the children walked onto the red carpet, melodious music echoed over Alnwick Castle. The expressions of the local British people finally brightened. At least the orchestral music had a distinctly European and American feel. The Hogwarts school anthem, accompanied by Hedwig's theme, began playing. Not all the children from around the world understood it, and of course, most of them had no interest in listening to the music. The moment they entered the castle gates, they were greeted by a bizarre and fantastical world. Winged white horses soared in the sky, unicorns with pointed horns strolled leisurely across the lawns, and other magical birds and beasts soared high, their wings vibrant with color, their tails trailing two long streaks of rainbow light. In the distance, a young woman in a white Nordic robe played a harp in a pavilion. Flower beds dotted the castle grounds, filled with strange, unidentifiable flowers. The God King of Asgard commanded, providing both people and goods. Whether they were people or goods, the students and guests were guaranteed to have never seen them before on Earth. Cool, Peter Parker's eyes lit up. At that moment, The thought of Iron Man had completely vanished from his mind. Could the Iron Man suit have magical properties? Students, please come here to select your ones and collect your textbooks and supplies. A giant figure, over 6 meters tall, suddenly appeared at the front right of the red carpet. He wore a loose-fitting white shirt and pants, with blonde hair and, most curiously, a striking white crescent beard on his upper lip. Oh my god. Is he the legendary giant? He's so tall, he feels as tall as a 2-story building, the students chattered at the side of the younger version of the Whitebeard. Friends watching from the back, please move this way and take a short break at the viewing platform. Once the students have packed up, the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry grand opening ceremony and first opening ceremony will begin on time, another voice rang out from the front left of the red carpet. This was an Asian man with long black hair, dressed in white traditional Chinese clothing. He had a handsome face and a hint of playful, uninhibited charm. Yang Guo's height wasn't particularly noticeable, but his sudden appearance, a figure imbued with an oriental air amidst a castle replete with European-style architecture, still drew a lot of attention. Are you Chinese? A Chinese child at the front of the line asked in Chinese, a hint of trepidation in his voice. Yes, I am. Yang Guo smiled and nodded, replying in fluent Chinese. Great. The 300 Chinese children instantly felt a sense of familiarity, their apprehension about the unfamiliar surroundings greatly alleviated. They were naturally delighted to receive an unexpected invitation to the legendary magic school, but they had come from their homeland to distant England, where they struggled to speak the language and were unfamiliar with the surroundings. Besides them, the other 1,000 or so children were all prominent-nosed foreigners, and the younger children were inevitably apprehensive. Are you a teacher at the school? Another Chinese child asked. Yes, I am, Yang Guo continued with a smile. Are there many Chinese teachers at the school? The children asked. There's only me. Before the children could show their disappointment, Yang Guo added, but I'm the head of Hufflepuff, one of the 4 major houses. If you're interested, you can choose to join this house. Great. The children from China cheered up again. They were no longer floating around. Someone was in charge. The spectators approaching from behind, upon hearing the commotion, suddenly realized, no wonder they admitted 300 Chinese children. Some speculated further. This person is dressed in ancient Chinese costume. Could he also be a young-looking, but actually hundreds of years old? It seems the magical world has always existed on Earth, but its traces were hard to find in the past. Could this magic school have been established after the ancient magical world reached a consensus? Otherwise, there would be no need to recruit students from all over the world, and the student population would be relatively evenly distributed. The ancient magical world must have had wizards from many different countries, and the Eastern country has a long history. After the imagination monster appeared, it began to use the existing information to continuously expand its ideas, constantly improving on details that even Lin Hao hadn't considered. The adults attending the ceremony, guided by magical creatures, headed towards the viewing platform on the left. The children running to the right ignored the adults' complex thoughts, their attention completely absorbed by the dazzling array of magical items. Is this a wand? Peter Parker, swift and quick, darted through the queue to the long table filled with magical instruments in the blink of an eye. Without a word, he grabbed one and, imitating the wizards in the cartoons, waved it repeatedly at Ned Leeds beside him. Strange, why isn't there any reaction? A kindly woman suddenly appeared from behind the table. She was also dressed in ancient Nordic-style robes and had golden hair. Queen Frigga waved her hand, and Peter's wand returned to the table. She sternly scolded, "Don't wave your wand at your classmates." Cool. Peter stared at Frigga with a gleam in his eyes. Are you a teacher at the school too? Yes, I'm in charge of Ravenclaw House and am the head of house. Although sent by her husband, Frigga was happy to do so. She hadn't seen a child in years. Asgardians have a long lifespan, but reproduction is difficult. And there had been no newborns in Asgard for a long time. Arriving here, surrounded by children, Frigga felt her heart, even after 5,000 years, rejuvenate a little. I remember the school profile mentioning Ravenclaw selecting students based on intelligence and intelligence. Does that mean it's filled with only top students? Gwen Stacy was quick to grasp the key points. That's not true, Frigga replied with a smile. Although each house at Hogwarts has its own unique characteristics, it also has a diverse student body. Hogwarts believes that every student is a treasure waiting to be developed. You may excel in one area, or have weaknesses in another. That's not a problem. I trust our teachers will train you to become qualified magicians. The Queen of Asgard's skills were naturally flawless. Alright, students, let me introduce you to your most important magical tool, the wand. The Hogwarts of the Marvel Universe is a complex place. I'll have a few more chapters on the magic school, and then I'll move on to the investigation of SHIELD, so don't worry. Also, just to reiterate, Eastern fantasy will also appear, but since we can't involve domestic content, we'll have to work around it. Maybe something like Overseas 3 Immortal Mountains. We'll see when the time comes. Maybe we'll have some new ideas. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Little Spider. Let's go to the Snake Court. The Queen of Asgard stood at the long table, explaining the principles and structure of wands to the children gathered around her. A wand is a magician's most important tool. It will be the foundation of your future magic. Please take care of it as you would your own hands. Hearing her words, Gwen Stacy, standing nearby, asked curiously, Ms. Dean, I just saw you cast magic without a wand. Ms. Stacy, you're very observant. Frigga glanced at Gwen and answered loudly, a wand is only one way to cast magic. Many powerful magicians don't need one, and some special spells can be cast without one. Of course, using a wand that matches your own characteristics can amplify the power of your magic, so whether or not to use a wand depends on your efforts and choices. Frigga's magic doesn't require the aid of a wand or the Ring of Camartage. Her magic is unique in the entire Marvel Universe. Considering her status and Odin's fighting prowess, ordinary dimensional demons dare not provoke her. Even Marvel hasn't yet decided how to categorize Frigga's magic, and the comics haven't yet explained the source of her magic. Loki's magic stems from Frigga. Some of Loki's magic is woefully weak, while others are godlike. After arriving at this magic school, Frigga encountered a completely different kind of magic. Learning from others, she generated many brilliant ideas. These insights naturally became the foundation of Hogwarts and its owner, Lin Hao. Okay, let me introduce the main wands currently available at the school, Frigga said, holding up a dark red wand from the long table. This one is made of redwood, with a core of killing nerves, and it has a tremendous amplification effect on fire magic. She deliberately stepped away and cast a spell toward the sky. The small wand instantly transformed into a flamethrower, spewing out a column of fire over 10 meters high. Wow, cool, almost all the boys' eyes lit up. I want this one, Peter Parker excitedly said to Ned Leeds beside him. Whatever, as long as it works. Ned still looked unmotivated. He had no idea why he had been chosen, nor that his magical talent was so high that even the future Sorcerer Supreme would be ashamed. Strange struggled for a long time, finally being thrown to the top of a snowy mountain and being shocked into opening a dimensional portal. However, Ned, after receiving his hanging ring, opened the dimensional portal with just a few simple gestures. At that time, he didn't even know the spell or the principles of magic. Frigga put down the fire unicorn wand and picked up a vibranium wand. She continued to explain, this wand is made of walnut wood with the core of a meteorite metal. It's gentle, stable, and has excellent energy conductivity, which can amplify all magic. The world of Harry Potter has a wide variety of wands, even allowing each wizard to have his own unique wand. However, the Marvel Universe lacks the magical creatures of the wizarding world. While substitutes can be found, they often go in the wrong direction, and accurate data is difficult to obtain without long-term exploration and verification. Director Lin, where does he have the time to contribute to the popularization of magic in the Harry Potter world? He founded this magic school solely to stir things up. After experimenting with several common materials, he settled on several industrialized wands. The fire Killin farm grew larger and larger, producing as much Killin blood, Killin armor, and Killin nerves as needed. Combined with the panacea of vibranium and the Pegasus, unicorns, and other animals provided by Asgard, he eventually produced these assembly line products. After introducing several industrialized wands, Frigga concluded, each wand has different effects and properties due to its material and color. Line up and touch each wand. The one that feels best to you is the one that suits you best. Remember, don't choose the one that looks the most powerful. Trust your instincts. An unsuitable wand will only slow down your learning. Although the school will replace your wands free of charge, You'll have to catch up on your own. If you fail exams repeatedly, the school will expel you." This last sentence was incredibly devastating. The children, at least 8 years old, had mostly attended school. Those too poor to even afford kindergarten or elementary school understood the cruelty of the world more deeply. Therefore, the 1,600 students were no longer frivolous and became serious. The hallmark of industrialized products is their large quantity. Lin Hao had prepared 1,601 sets, giving each child one to choose from, greatly speeding up the selection process. After choosing their wands, they returned to their dormitories, carrying their magic textbooks and cauldrons. Under Tom Riddle's renovations, an entire corner of Alnwick Castle was converted into dormitories, even expanded and reinforced with magic to accommodate 7 grades and tens of thousands of students simultaneously. This is far more than the original Hogwarts, which only accepts students from within England. Everyone, remember your floor and room number, so you don't get lost. The tall, white-bearded figure led the future wizards to the honeycomb-like dormitories. From below, the dome seemed to reach the heavens, each floor densely packed with doors, a dizzying sight. Don't worry, as long as you remember your floor and room number, the spiral staircase will automatically lead you to your dormitory door. Everyone, put your things down first, then it's time for the sorting ceremony. The sorting hat is a unique magical item at Hogwarts, a rare self-aware magical item, created by the founders of the 4 original houses. With a world barrier between them, Tom couldn't get it, and neither could Lin Hao. So, he had Frigga cast a magical circle as a means of sorting the houses. Classmates, when you enter this circle, you will face your inner selves and follow your instincts. When you emerge, you will have arrived at the house that suits you best. Gwen, Ned, I've got an idea. Of the 3, Peter, while currently the weakest in combat, has the highest IQ and is often the one coming up with ideas, though Gwen is usually the one making the decisions. Perhaps we can pray deeply in our hearts to be admitted to a particular house, and when we emerge, there's a good chance we'll be sorted into the same house. Are you serious? Gwen asked, unsure. Yes, the dean has been emphasizing following your instincts. If we don't have any, we can create them, Peter said matter-of-factly. Which house should we choose? Ned didn't want to be separated from his friends. Getting to know new classmates and making new friends would be too much trouble. We already know the deans of 2 colleges, but we don't know if Headmaster Riddle will take charge of one of them. Peter turned his head and glanced at Tom standing on the podium. Seeing his green tie, he suddenly had an idea. Go to Slytherin, ambitious, shrewd, and victory-oriented. Gwen secretly recalled the characteristics of this college and felt that it suited her taste, so she nodded and said, okay, let's go to Serpent House. Ned didn't care. Wherever his friends went, he would go. Chapter 137 Camartage is the Black Magician's headquarters. A green magic circle stood on the lawn of Alnwick Castle, like a maze. It had a single entrance but 4 exits, each adorned with a flag representing a different house. 1,600 students filed through the entrance. There were no tests of character, no embarrassing drama. The children simply hesitated, unsure of which path to take, or which choice to make. Seeing the children within the magic circle wavering, Tom Riddle on the dais suddenly spoke. Students, remember this, it is not our abilities but our choices that reveal our true selves. As soon as he spoke, Tom felt a surge of relief, even greater than when he had won a match against Dumbledore. Wait, old headmaster, in this strange world, as a Slytherin, I will take Hogwarts to heights you have never achieved. The world will forever remember the name Tom Marvolo Riddle. I am the greatest wizard of all. Looking out at the castle and the pond he owned, Tom was enraged. If before, he had simply completed his master's tasks, now it was different. Tom had found his own purpose. Who says the Dark Lord can't be a decent figure? Good and evil are merely labels imposed by the world. His philosophical voice echoed through the castle, and the people saw Tom no longer as a young and handsome man, but as a white-haired, worldly wise elder. Some of the children within the magic circle understood and quickened their pace. Peter Parker, who had just stepped through the entrance, was overjoyed and said to his 2 companions, "Did you hear that? I guessed right. This magic circle is meant to make us recognize our choices. Come on, Slytherins, here we come." Having made their choices, the children within the magic circle quickly emerged, appearing under the banners of their respective houses. However, some children who hadn't understood, or those who were naturally indecisive, remained hesitant and anxious. The winner is instantly decided. Many of the important figures who had come to observe the ceremony had already grasped the deeper meaning of the magic school's sorting ceremony. It didn't really matter which house the children were ultimately sorted into, as all houses shared the same textbooks and taught the same knowledge. At least for this first class, there were no distinctions based on background. But character determines destiny. Even second and third generations, enjoying the legacy of a legacy, could achieve vastly different results due to their differing personalities and abilities, let alone these wizards starting from scratch. Children who understood the principal's instructions and made a firm choice immediately were naturally looked upon with high regard by the school and teachers. This sorting ceremony is essentially an entrance exam. Several influential figures from the British families huddled together, whispering, "It's over. Those brats from our family were a step behind, and now they won't get good grades." The words came out as a complaint, but the loud voice, as if to make sure no one heard, made them seem boastful. A few, the elderly men nearby, were immediately annoyed. "You old man, you have several in your family? We only have one, and some haven't even gotten one yet." Another group of elderly men from America were even more displeased. They were all zeros. Originally, Tom hadn't extended invitations to wealthy families outside of Britain. However, the established American conglomerates were largely descended from European families, allowing them to cultivate connections indirectly. Furthermore, capital knows no borders, and they haven't completely abandoned their European holdings. These old men certainly weren't here to watch the ceremony. They were all there for the 3 magical potions at the banquet. The magic circle wasn't large, and even at a slow pace, one could still walk through it. It wasn't a maze, per se, rather, it was a maze within oneself, where even hesitancy and wandering would lead to a point of no return. Finally, a remarkable phenomenon occurred. All 300 Asian students chose Hufflepuff. They had agreed before entering the magic circle to go to their family's home. The Chinese people's tendency to stick together was one factor, but there was also a more practical factor. Their English wasn't good enough for proper communication. While the school promised to use translation magic to ensure everyone could understand during class, there were inevitably house-organized activities after school, and those who didn't fit in would be in trouble. After the sorting, the 4 houses weren't perfectly evenly populated, but the difference was not significant. The moment they emerged from the maze, the students' white ties and robe linings changed to the colors of their respective houses, and a new house crest appeared on their chests. After some fuss, the Hogwarts grand opening ceremony officially began. Tom, perched on the podium, waved his wand, and fireworks erupted in the sky. Amidst melodious music and dazzling fireworks, Tom stepped forward and announced, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry officially opens today." The spectators were prepared for a few words from him, but Principal Riddle was pragmatic and delivered just that. "Thank you all for coming. Let me introduce you to the school's administration and faculty. I will personally serve as headmaster of Slytherin House." This was Tom's obsession. Yet, Peter, already standing in the Slytherin square, grinned triumphantly at his 2 companions. "See, I guessed right. Ravenclaw House will be led by Professor Frigga. She will teach history of magic, potions, and illusions." The Queen of Asgard stepped forward, offering the children a kind smile. "Gryffindor House will be led by Professor Maximoff. She will teach combat magic." Wanda, her appearance altered, reluctantly stepped forward, nodding coldly in response. She didn't want to waste time teaching little brats and reduce the time she and Brother Lin spent driving, but this was Brother Lin's assignment. She was torn. Fortunately, she could use special magic to get home in time after get off work each day, so the green and yellow lights wouldn't dominate her workday. Hufflepuff House will be led by Professor Yang Guo. He will teach martial arts and strengthen your physique. A true wizard must possess a strong body. This will greatly increase your chances of survival in battle. The ancient version of Yang Guo stepped forward and cupped his fists at the students. "Yes, the wizarding world is not peaceful. You are about to enter a magical yet dangerous world, where we face the constant threat of dark wizards." Tom's tone was heavy, revealing a hidden truth. "Therefore, I will personally oversee the defense against the dark arts class." At that moment, the Dark Lord felt a sense of justification and righteous joy. Despite Tom's self-congratulation, the over 1,000 children and hundreds of dignitaries present were shocked. Sure enough, these wizards have bad intentions. They're clearly here to recruit men. Are these so-called magic schools just barracks for wizards to train as war fodder? Initially complaining, they eventually accepted reality. So what? Are you willing to take your little devil back home? The magicians have appeared in the world, proving that the world will become more and more dangerous. If we don't face it, are we going to run back home and become ostriches? At least their school system is 7 years, which is enough time for the little devils to grow up. It's better than the recruit camps during war. They are willing to spend so much time to train them, which means the intensity of the war is not very high, and there is still time to prepare. The adults were talking about it, but the children had no idea of the cruelty of war. The younger ones only regarded the so-called enemies as role-playing games when playing games with their friends. The older children were just about to enter puberty and were worried that they would not be able to use the magic they learned. Principal, who are the black wizards you are talking about? A brave child immediately asked loudly. Where are they? Tom frowned and replied in a deep voice, the black wizards come from a place called Kamartaj, which is the black wizards' base camp. Their leader is called the Supreme Sorcerer, a great devil who has survived for hundreds of years by using dark forces. I can only ride on weekdays, please forgive me. Chapter 138 Ancient One in Conflict. Atop a distant mountain, within the Temple of Kamartaj, the magical sanctuary of the Marvel Universe, the bald old nun's face suddenly darkened. Outrageous, Baron Mordo, standing beside her, leaped to his feet in rage. This is the most vicious slander against the sacred Kamartaj. Teacher, how can you tolerate this? I certainly can't. The magicians of Kamartaj were undoubtedly the most astonished by the news of Tom Riddle's return and the establishment of a magic school in England. While there were other magicians in the Marvel Universe, theirs was truly the only magical sanctuary on Earth. Furthermore, Kamartaj had a collection of all the magic of this universe, or at least a brief introduction to it. However, the magic Tom Riddle displayed was completely outside the purview. It was a magic unknown to them, a systemic magic. Upon hearing this, some of the magicians within Kamartaj were curious, while others worried that this school would jeopardize their current status. Consequently, several had been approaching the Ancient One, seeking her intervention and some sort of response. Kamartaj is said to be detached from the world, but in reality, its magicians are all from the secular world. Each has friends and family, and they themselves cannot sever their ties to the mundane world. The Sorcerer Supreme, Wang, has taken to underground boxing, participating in variety shows, and appearing on American television. He claims to be promoting Kamartaj, but in reality, he's simply seeking recognition from the American community. The Kamartaj of the film and television universe lacks the pretensions of a guardian of the dimension, more like a purely supernatural group. Not only Baron Mordo, but wizards throughout Kamartaj, either online or through magical espionage, were furious upon hearing Tom's slander and gathered outside the Ancient One's residence. Today marks the first day of school at Hogwarts, and the magicians within Kamartaj are deeply concerned about this worldly school. Such words were unexpected. Sorcerer Supreme, we must speak out. Indeed, we cannot allow them to slander us. The world is ignorant, unaware of Kamartaj's centuries-long achievements. We must redeem ourselves. Facing her excited disciples, the Ancient One remained silent, her heart already mired in conflict. Ever since Lin Hao gained the power of the time baggage, the Ancient One had been unable to see him in the timeline, unless she could use the Eye of Reality to glimpse his actions. Unfortunately, Lin Hao's most important tasks occurred in the dimension linked to the imp, and the old nun could only see a glimpse of the biology class liver stream. As Wanda's magical prowess grew, the old nun could no longer even see the liver streams. Lin Hao's power had risen so rapidly. Before the Battle of the White House, the Ancient One had ignored him, but afterward, his power had skyrocketed, leaving her completely powerless. In recent months, even the Eye of Reality had been unable to detect him. Although the Ancient One could no longer see Lin Hao's plans, the sudden appearance of such a strange figure as Tom Riddle had instantly locked onto Lin Hao. There was no doubt it was him. This had already troubled Ancient One. Previously, the enemy possessed the Holy Spear, along with Zheng Xian and the old Taoist priest, so a desperate effort might have held a glimmer of hope. Now, with Odin inexplicably standing behind Lin Hao, even the chance was gone. Another discovery further troubled Ancient One. She had recently tried to pray to the Eternal, the mastermind behind her, but to no avail. The bald old nun, though the weakest Ancient One, shouldered the important task of guiding the strange of the film universe, making her a crucial tool. While she wasn't a double-flowered red stick under the command of the Eternal, like the white-bearded male Ancient One from other universes, she was still a short mule entrusted with a crucial mission. Without the authority to contact the multiverse-spanning Eternal, she could at least contact the single Eternal within her own universe. Just like her henchman unable to contact the leader, he needed to be able to contact a smaller leader, otherwise, how could he lead the team? The Eternal beyond the multiverse was a Marvel-inspired deity, omniscient and almighty. The Eternal within a single universe was a cell within the multiverse. The Eternal in the film and television universe has already appeared in Thor, Ragnarok 4, a miniature version of himself, only 3 or 4 meters tall. The strength of this Eternal remains to be seen. After failing to contact the Master, Ancient One suddenly realizes a crucial point: while she cares deeply about America's survival and prosperity, Eternal likely doesn't. A single Eternal only appears when the survival of a single universe is threatened, while a multiverse Eternal is even more prestigious, appearing only when the multiverse's existence is threatened. The universe is vast, Earth is but a tiny, insignificant planet, and America is merely a nation within it. Not to mention that Lin Hao currently has no plans to directly massacre Americans. Even if such a move were to occur in the future, the annihilation of a mere 300 or 400 million lives would be of little concern to Eternal. While Earth is a special place in the eyes of many powerful entities, that certainly doesn't apply to Eternal. Why? Because Marvel has overstated the Eternal status. The bald old nun version of Ancient One cares about America's honor and disgrace, rise and fall, because she was designed to resemble an American, a completely white American elite eagle, and naturally cares about America's interests. Eternity, however, is different. To create this conceptual deity, Marvel has elevated his status to a level so high that he no longer possesses ordinary human nature. As long as Lin Hao doesn't challenge the most fundamental logic of the Marvel Universe, he won't attract correctional forces, let alone Eternity's attention. In Eternity's eyes, Lin Hao is still a member of the Marvel Universe. Whatever Lin Hao chooses to do is the voluntary choice of all creatures in the universe. As long as Lin Hao doesn't intervene to destroy either the single universe or the multiverse, even wiping out all the Americans on Earth will be a matter of natural disarray on a single planet. The Marvel Multiverse contains numerous universes where Earth has been destroyed or its inhabitants annihilated, such as Deadpool's destruction of the Marvel Universe, the Zombie Universe, and so on. Yes, the Marvel editorial department created an eternity that is at least formally fair. This also presents Lin Hao with an opportunity. Even if you were to achieve the power to re-establish the universe and rip it off, at least that would have alarmed Eternity, the single universe. But Lin Hao by then would no longer be the same Lin Hao as before. Ancient One didn't know Lin Hao's ultimate goal, she simply felt lost in the present. If she couldn't draw upon the boss's power, and if Lin Hao, having suffered a loss, no longer dared to challenge the underlying logic of the Marvel Universe, she would be helpless, forced to watch him destroy the America she cherished. Committing suicide to confront the boss wouldn't work either, as Lin Hao had vanished from the timeline, leaving her with no evidence. Even if he did, the boss might not care about America's survival. Eternity accepted her as a henchman because of her uniqueness, especially since she was supposedly Chinese. Furthermore, she hadn't even completed the mission assigned to her by the boss. If she abdicated for personal gain, would she still want to be around? Human nature is complex. While this version of the Ancient One cares about America, she also cares about herself, otherwise, she wouldn't have sought to absorb the power of the dark dimension. Banana people lick their father's boots for the sake of gaining benefits, but how many banana people are truly willing to risk their lives for their fathers? Just as Ancient One was struggling with this, he suddenly remembered something. Oh no. Cassilis is in the Sanctuary of London. This chapter is a bit of a background check. While Marvel often makes mistakes with its own settings, they have definitely raised the bar for Eternal to a very high level. The other night, while reading the comments, I found a disgusting lickspittle who actually said that Eternal could single-handedly destroy Taishang Laojian. I directly retorted to him. Taishang is the supreme deity in Taoism, equivalent in status to the Christian god. Even if Stan Lee were to be resurrected, he wouldn't dare to say that his characters are more powerful than God. Chapter 139 Dormammu hastily passes through. A golden red halo suddenly appeared within the Hogwarts grounds. Caecilius, clad in a dark yellow monk's robe, emerged through the portal, accompanied by several minions in maroon hooded trench coats. Whether it was weakness or the reserve of a supreme sorcerer, the Ancient One remained indifferent to the provocation. But Caecilius, however, was determined to redeem Kamartaj's due dignity. How dare you challenge Kamartaj, little brat? Caecilius disdained to argue, staring coldly at Tom Riddle on the dais. You will pay for this." Without another word, Caecilius and his minions leaped to their feet, stepping on a flashing golden shield and charging towards the dais. "Oh my goodness! Are they dark wizards? Headmaster, be careful!" the children in the audience exclaimed, and the dignitaries on the viewing platform were equally worried. They had come to seek immortality and did not want to be drawn into the disputes of the wizarding world. Tom ignored him. His tall, white-bearded figure leaped forward and slammed his fist into the air. A milky white halo expanded, and visible cracks appeared in the air. A crackling sound echoed. The light shields beneath Caecilius and his men shattered, their bones and internal organs shattering as they spurted out blood. Seizing their moment of leverage, Yang Guo unleashed the 9 spiral shadows technique, charging forward like a ghost. With a single finger, he immobilized the group of novice magicians. "Cool, is this magic?" The children's eyes lit up, and they applauded. "This is definitely not magic," Caecilius exclaimed inwardly, frozen by the strange means. The headmaster hadn't even made a move before the 2 teachers had already dealt with the incoming enemy. This move undoubtedly enhanced Hogwarts' image of power. The old American men in the viewing platform, however, stared at Caecilius and his men, their thoughts stirring. They hadn't imagined there were other wizards in the world, and that they were enemies of Hogwarts. This was their chance. They had to find Kamar Taj and convince its wizards to cooperate with America. The old men were determined. That damned British wizard had just revealed a crucial piece of information: harnessing dark energy could allow one to live for centuries. This undoubtedly thrilled the American old men. As for darkness, haha, childish. Darkness and light are just labels to deceive people. Could anything darker be darker than what they had done? The opening ceremony was being broadcast live to the world, and Kamar Taj, already connected to the internet, naturally witnessed the fate of Caecilius and his colleagues. Seeing another disciple of the Ancient One so easily defeated, the magicians of Kamar Taj were in disbelief. "This is definitely not magic, how despicable. Harnessing another power, I can't believe our magic is so fragile. I'm going to clear Kamar Taj's name, let's go, let's go." The crowds of Kamar Taj were filled with a sense of grief, a sense of shattered faith. "Look, Master Caecilius hasn't failed. He's still moving." Immediately, a magician spotted Caecilius on camera, seemingly regaining his movements. His fingers were secretly carving a mysterious symbol. Magical energy converged in the air, forming a red symbol. "I summon you, Dormammu. When you hear the call, descend upon me." Caecilius hadn't yet led his men into the library of Kamar Taj, but he already knew the Ancient One was drawing power from the Dark Dimension. He had once secretly glimpsed a fleeting rune on the Ancient One's forehead. It was this rune that enabled him to locate the corresponding information within the vast magical tomes. After years of preparation, he gathered his forces and invaded the library, finding the specific grimoire and tearing out the page containing the summoning ritual. Caecilius's inexplicable defeat today had consumed his sanity. He didn't want to be seen as a clown, so he decided to take a gamble. He didn't know if the great Lord Dormammu, the master of the Dark Dimension, could sense it, but he had no other options. Kamar Taj in the film and television universe has been significantly weakened. While its magicians practice martial arts, they employ normal human techniques, lacking any special powers, and the power is even more lackluster. Kamar Taj's magic is based on borrowing. Forging iron requires strength. If a magician lacks potential and can't repay in the future, the dimensional demons won't lend much power. Many dimensional demons are willing to lend power to a lackey like the Ancient One, favored by the Eternals. However, a demon of average strength shouldn't expect repayment. This applies to both the white-bearded male Ancient One and the bald old nun version. Dormammu lent her money for centuries, and on the verge of recovering it with interest, the old nun refused and returned to the Eternals. This forced a fault on the lender, infuriating her to the point of losing her mind and attempting to devour Earth, the very planet that nurtured the Celestials. Caecilius, knowing little about Hogwarts, stormed in with ambition, only to be stunned by a punch. Desperate, he resorted to a gamble. Finally, Wanda muttered to herself. Brother Lin's mission was to expose Kamar Taj's true nature before the world, so she hadn't taken action just now, waiting for him to explode. Lin Hao's plan assumed that when Tom shouted those words, Kamar Taj, with its close ties to the mortal world, would undoubtedly receive the news. The Ancient One might not come, but the arrogant Caecilius would most likely. This provided room for maneuver. Even if Caecilius didn't yet know the ritual to summon Dormammu, Odin did. Lin Hao had intended Dormammu to make a show from the beginning. A distorted purple-red light suddenly appeared in the dark night sky, and a pair of eerie eyes descended over Hogwarts. A mixture of cold, evil, and twisted emotions enveloped all witnesses. It was undoubtedly a sinister villain. "Who is summoning?" Dormammu took in the smiling face of the Queen of Asgard, then sensed a sharp edge, aimed at him from across the distant interstellar space. Gungnir, the Eternal Spear. Having suffered a loss before, the memory remains vivid. "Damn it, Odin, you've tricked me." Dormammu said nothing, turning and walking away. "Lord Dormammu, you..." Caecilius was stunned. The Dark Lord arrived quickly and departed even faster, but the impression he left on those who witnessed him lingered for a long time. Even the old men of America had developed a strong desire to call upon him. This was the inherent attraction of darkness, one of the ways the dimensional demon used to spread its faith. Not to mention those who had faced him directly, even acquiring items imbued with residual power would gradually distort the perception of those who came into contact with him. Tisk, how boring. Running so fast, Wanda, whose magical power had surged, had recently been eager to act. After gaining access to the magic of the Harry Potter world, Wanda's magical bloodline was fully activated, and her strength soared. Harry Potter is a magical world that values bloodlines, and Scarlet Witch is undoubtedly a top-tier magical talent. Currently, even the former Dark Lord is no match for Wanda, with her accumulation of both worlds. Queen Frigga could have a discussion with Wanda, but Asgard was one of Lin Hao's most important supporters, so the two sides could only discuss it briefly. It was more like a discussion than a discussion. Mr. Edward, please take the bad guest away. Tom waved his hand. The dinner is about to begin. Chapter 140, I didn't lie to you, did I? I really got younger. The dinner was held in a vast banquet hall. Alnwick Castle lacked a venue of this size, so Tom Riddle had to renovate it. The enormous hall currently seats over 2,000, and in the future, it can be divided into different levels to accommodate different grades. Tom clinked his spoon against his wineglass, making a clinking sound. All the children looked up, temporarily resisting the temptation of the delicious food on the long table, to gaze upon their powerful headmaster. First of all, thank you all for coming to our opening celebrations. Tom raised his glass high, offering a toast to the elderly guests. These were the ones who would soon be saddled with money, so this was a farewell toast. The elderly responded with a naturally amicable response. Classmates, dinner begins. Enjoy your meal, Tom said, still direct and without the nagging of a leader. After a long afternoon of hard work, the children weren't already hungry, and they couldn't restrain themselves any longer, eating and drinking voraciously. They were all grown-ups, so indigestion wasn't a problem. When they returned to their dormitories, they would probably make a fuss for a while before going to bed. The long table was overflowing with delicious food, its aroma filling the air. Many children from troubled countries had never tasted such food since they were born, and tears welled up as they ate. Is this a dream? If so, let me wake up later. Can I take some food home for Mom and Dad? Gwen Stacy turned to look at the sobbing female classmate beside her. She was actually the same age as her, but shorter, clearly stunted by malnutrition. Hurry up and eat. You can't take some food home, but once you learn magic, Mom and Dad's life will improve, and they'll be able to enjoy these delicacies soon. Okay, the female classmate nodded. There were sensible children, and naturally, there were also children from wealthy families. A bunch of country bumpkins. I don't know why Principal Riddle would recruit such lowly country bumpkins, a little boy with blonde hair said, giving a sardonic grin. That's right. Magic belongs to us noble aristocrats, someone beside her echoed. After school starts, find an opportunity to make them realize their inferiority and leave on their own accord. Little brats have their own ways, but Tom didn't intend to interfere. He simply completed the task assigned by his master. He wasn't responsible for guiding their thoughts. The children had been eating for nearly an hour when they finally couldn't eat anymore and slumped over. Edward, take the students back to the dormitories. Remember to have them drink a glass of digestive water before bed, Tom instructed. Okay, Whitebeard quite liked this atmosphere. Although they were clones, they perfectly inherited every characteristic of the originals. It must be said that Vegapunk's cloning technology was so unreasonable, even their personalities could be perfectly replicated. After all the children had left, the real night banquet began. Hadn't the old men waited all these days just for this moment? Tom and Gaohua were the only teachers left at the main table. Whitebeard had gone to get the students to bed, Wanda had already left, and Frigga didn't want to witness the ensuing embarrassment. Tom took out his wand and waved at the door, shutting the banquet hall. He then took out 3 glass bottles and waved to the old men. "We're all civilized gentlemen. To maintain decorum, I've decided to film secretly." As Tom spoke, Gaohua pulled out a wooden box with a small opening from somewhere. "Hogwarts has just been established, and there are indeed many areas that need funds. I have no choice but to ask for your financial support. Please write down the amount you're willing to donate on a piece of paper. The 3 with the most generosity will receive a magical potion brewed by me." "Damn it," the old men present cursed inwardly. Sure enough, these old bastards who have lived for hundreds of years don't leave any loopholes. They had of course already discussed who would receive the 3 potions before they arrived. Anyone who dared to mess around would be jointly suppressed. Because Tom Riddle hadn't just given out 1, but 3. If he could give out 3, he could definitely give out more. At most, they could wait a little longer. There was no need to fight fiercely this time. Therefore, the 3 powerful, wealthy, and elderly leaders had already secretly determined the ownership through the exchange of benefits. The elders of both Britain and America agreed to follow the agreed-upon rules. Who were they? A group of superiors accustomed to being high and mighty, defying all odds. Even if the other party were a wizard, they wouldn't let them lead them by the nose. It was simply a matter of giving a slightly larger donation, as if it were a way to ward off beggars. But they proved difficult to deal with, opting for a secret bidding model. This would surely dissuade the oppressed elders from obeying. There might be a chance in the future, but what if there wasn't? Securing the profits was paramount. Previously, forced by the rules jointly imposed by the major conglomerates and families, the weaker families had been forced to forego this opportunity, hoping for another chance. But now, with a secret bidding model, there was no need to obey. While the power these elders wielded varied, the difference was barely noticeable unless a war broke out. A 100 billion and a 200 billion asset might appear to be twice as large, but in reality, the power they displayed wasn't much different, as most of the assets were stagnant, and the excess wouldn't be needed unless an all-out war broke out. It's like drought kills drought, flood kills flood. The old men would then revert to their previous understanding. Since they'd already taken out 3 bottles, there must be more. Since you asked me to make some concessions this time, I can also ask you to make some concessions this time. It was simply a matter of who was willing to pay the most. A secret bid disrupted the old men's previous arrangement. A bit like 2 peaches kill 3 warriors, the peaceful atmosphere suddenly turned into turbulent war. This became a test of determination, a competition of who was more willing to spend. "Everyone, you can start writing," Tom added fuel to the fire and yawned. "It's getting late. After we are done, everyone should go back to bed." The old men took a deep breath, knowing that Tom was scheming. There was no choice but to give up their original amount and start spending heavily. In the end, it took Gaohua a full half-hour to collect all the notes. Tom had it much easier. He took out his wand and waved it. The wooden box split open in all directions, and the notes filled with amounts floated before him. A single glance was enough to determine the answer. He took out the 3 with the largest amounts and read out their names. "Congratulations, all 3. Please come forward." Of the final 3, 2 were still the same names originally chosen, while the other was someone who had squeezed in after a massive hemorrhage. The amount offered was more than 100-fold higher than originally projected, practically reaching the limit of their family's available cash. "Before drinking the potion, please remember this," Tom warned solemnly. "When you drink it, you must firmly recall your youth. Magic potions are extremely powerful, and you are ordinary people without any knowledge of magic. If your conviction is not firm, the ultimate effect will be affected. Does that mean the younger we think of ourselves, the younger we will become?" An old man keenly grasped the key point. "Exactly," Tom nodded with a smile. "This is the first time I've given the potion to ordinary people. Your bodies will likely waste some of the effects, so, you must have firm conviction. The clearer your recollection, the better the ultimate effect." The presentation was clear, logical, and perfectly reasonable. The 3 old men, who had finally received the precious potion after a massive hemorrhage, nodded in agreement, agreeing that Tom was right. Magic should be based on idealism. Who among these old men hasn't reminisced about their youth by looking at photos of their youth? It's become almost a daily pastime in their old age. Their youthful appearance is etched in their minds. Only the poor can be helpless. These old men, left with only money, often rack their brains to come up with various ways to prolong their lives, just to regain their youth. The three men solemnly accepted the glass bottle of potion from Tom, took a deep breath, uncorked it, and drank it on the spot, fearing that the night would bring more trouble. A moment later, their faces and hair changed, wrinkles disappeared, and their gray hair grew back. Younger. Really younger, the old men behind them stood up almost simultaneously, each one filled with shock and envy. They had doubted it before, but all doubts were dispelled after seeing it with their own eyes. "Are you feeling a little dizzy?" Tom asked with a smile. "Why don't you go to the lounge and rest for a while?" The three old men nodded in agreement. Gaohua then led them to the lounge. The old men in the back didn't notice their sluggish pace was still as slow as before. Even if someone noticed, they would have thought it was just a sluggish reaction from the potion. The old men rushed forward, surrounding Tom and shouting praise. "Mr. Riddle, you are truly the greatest wizard ever. If Hogwarts needs anything in the future, just let us know." After flattering him, they asked about their most pressing concern. "Sir, when will the next potion be delivered? It's difficult to refine," Tom pondered. "I'll notify everyone when it's ready, okay? I'll satisfy you next time." Some of the old men, who had previously been less resolute, secretly resolved to win the battle next time. Meanwhile, the three men led by Gaohua to the lounge saw a young man as soon as they entered. Lin Hao smiled at them. "You're so eager to contribute to the Fire Kirin farm. You're great." A domineering aura swept over them, sending the three old men crashing to the ground and then into the space connected to the little devil. A moment later, three truly rejuvenated clones emerged. In the space linked to the little devil, three old men were stuffed with a Fire Kirin fruit and voluntarily signed the contract, becoming the new recruits to the Fire Kirin farm. "Come, look, there are newcomers." Justin Hammer was particularly lively, beckoning the group of old men over. "Hey, tell me who you are." The three old men were still confused. But after consuming the fruit, their aged bodies truly regained their vitality. While not feeling like they were in their early 20s, they had the energy of middle age. "Isn't that a lie?" Lin Hao said with a grin. "I really have become younger," but, although the power of the contract made them afraid to resist Lin Hao, they still held on to their own obsessions. "We would rather be human." "What kind of human?" Justin Hammer shouted angrily. "Being a dog for your master is the greatest honor of your life, little Jiazi. Teach him a lesson," Lin Hao ordered, turning and walking away. "Yes." Justin Hammer stuck out his tongue and said flatteringly, "Master, take care, I've made it in time." The magic school section is finished for now. Chapter 141 The Value of Anamozora. Lehigh Barracks, New Jersey. In the comics, this is the birthplace of Captain America and the Winter Soldier, located in Pennsylvania. In the film, the location is relocated to New Jersey. On New Year's Eve 2010, a golden red light appeared in the dark camp. Lin Hao, along with Wanda, Bulma, and Vegapunk, step into the abandoned, overgrown barracks. "Brother, where's this?" Wanda looked around curiously. "A place written down in history." Lin Hao looked around and found a low warehouse building. He walked to the iron gate, waved his magic wand, and shouted, "Alaho!" The lock on the iron gate popped open, intact. Behind the door was a staircase leading down to a spacious basement office, filled with aged office equipment. On the far wall was the SHIELD logo and 3 black and white photos of the founders. "This is the birthplace of the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Agency." Hearing Lin Hao's explanation, Bulma suddenly realized, "Master, is there something good here?" Given the Master's personality, he wouldn't have brought them here so late at night if it weren't for something good. "I guess so. I have a special tool." Lin Hao walked to the file rack and opened it effortlessly. He led the group to the elevator hidden behind the rack, entered the code, and pressed a floor. The bottom floor contained a massive database, but the equipment was old, full of antiques from the 1970s and 1980s. As the elevator door opened, the camera on the console flashed, and Arnim Zola, hiding inside, was startled and confused. He couldn't recognize Lin Hao, who had regained his appearance. He could only find superficial information about his identity, a Singaporean Chinese merchant. But an ordinary merchant wouldn't have found this place, and he had several obviously unnatural subordinates with him. Red-haired people only make up 1–2% of the Earth's population, but that's still considered normal. Green-haired people are unheard of. Not to mention the bizarre figure on the far right, with a large head, spindly legs, and a tongue that dragged down to its chest. At first glance, it looked like a red tie. Lin Hao walked over to the control console and said straight to the point, "Dr. Zora, come out and chat." Zora feigned death, stalling for time while frantically contacting Hydra outside. However, the people responsible for liaisons with him had recently been replaced by Alexander Pierce's men. "You're being ungrateful," Lin Hao chuckled. He walked over to an old-fashioned storage device against the wall, donned a glove from the world of Bleach, and slapped it. A soul, less than 1.4 meters long, was squeezed out. Lin Hao transferred a bit of spirit particles to it, transforming it into a spirit body. The bespectacled spirit of Arnim Zoro was in disbelief, a look of bewilderment on his face. "You?" Just as he curiously reached out to examine his newly acquired body, the imp had already leaped in front of him, raised a small fork, and slashed his palm. Bleeding, the parchment slapped against it with a smack. Zora said, taking in a flood of information in an instant, a grimace twisting across his face. "Am I volunteering now? Don't be so ungrateful." Director Lin's attitude towards a tool like Zora was clearly less than enthusiastic. "You're already dead, so now you have a body, be happy." Arnim Zora was a renowned scientist in the Marvel Universe. 60 or 70 years ago, he used outdated technology to develop a device that effectively harnessed the energy of the Tesseract. Honestly, this device was even more impressive than the arc reactor, as the arc reactor still consumed fuel, but the Tesseract was, in fact, a space stone, a singularity created in the early stages of the Big Bang, theoretically possessing infinite energy. Zora's device allowed humanity to safely and effectively harness the power of the Tesseract, effectively solving the energy problem. Despite possessing such a brilliant mind, SHIELD failed to capitalize on it. By the time Zora fell ill and died, the device had never been recreated, and humanity lost its chance to reach the stars. The American elite eagle didn't appreciate his worth, but Lin Hao was willing to give Zora a chance. So that's how it's made. After signing the contract, Lin Hao gained access to Zora's memories and discovered how he'd built the device. "Since you've provided such a valuable gift, I'll give you a chance to be my henchman." Zora was on the verge of tears, unable to even think of refusing. "Can you still get into the computer?" Lin Hao asked again. "Let me try." Zora's spirit walked over to the old storage device and gradually merged into it. It was extremely narrow at first, then it became accessible to humans. It was a little dry, but once it was moistened, it would be fine. Arnim Zora is a unique life form in Marvel's universe. Unlike Jarvis, who is simply an artificial intelligence, he possesses the characteristics of artificial intelligence while retaining a human consciousness, a soul. Zora stored his consciousness in the machine, becoming an immortal electronic life form. Of course, his immortality only applies to his normal state. There are still many ways to destroy electronic life in the universe. "Master, do you need me to do something?" Zora's face appeared on the old display screen, and he could only accept it, unable to resist. Looking at it from another perspective, he'd regained his physical form, able to detach from electronic devices while still maintaining his unique characteristics, a huge win. Clever Zora knew Lin Hao had come specifically to him and bestowed his magical powers. There must be some ulterior motive. "Stay here for a while. 2 people will come over soon. After your performance, come back to me and I'll replace your server with a better one." That was Director Lin's style. Though he treated his people with indifference, he was always generous to his own people. "Yes, Master," Zora agreed, but immediately offered his loyalty. "Master, Hydra isn't truly destroyed. They've launched a purge called Project Insight, attempting to eliminate all Earthlings who pose a threat to Hydra. I wrote them an algorithm that can predict a person's future by analyzing their past experiences and talents. Hydra will identify those who might pose a threat. It's just a child's game. Let them keep playing it," Lin Hao said, unfazed. How could those frogs in Hydra as well see the world clearly? "By the way, I've noticed that Alexander Pierce's behavior has been abnormal in the past year. He seems to have defected to a certain force, as expected of an electronic life form that can monitor everything at all times." Zoro has actually analyzed the answer from the clues. "He's mine now." Lin Hao cast an admiring look at Zora. "So that's the case," Zora suddenly realized and said quickly, "Master, don't worry. I will cooperate with Pierce to better complete the Master's task." Director Lin was very pleased to see that the tool man was so motivated and planned to give him a sweet treat first. "Bulma, Lao Bei, come and upgrade the new colleague." After possessing the characteristics of electronic life, Zora can not only improve performance by replacing hardware equipment, but also evolve through program upgrades. With the help of two unscientific scientists, Bulma and Vegapunk, Zora will definitely become the most powerful electronic life on Earth, with performance far surpassing Jarvis and the unborn Ultron. After doing these things, Lin Hao and his party returned the same way and deliberately cleaned up all traces. Even the lock on the iron door was intact. First update. Chapter 142. The joint investigation team arrives at the Triskelion building. After New Year's Day, Earth entered a new year. Nick Fury, at the Triskelion, felt it was going to be a difficult year. Boss, the JIT special plane has landed, Phil Coulson, who had come to meet them at the airport, reported by phone. Tell them to the hotel and treat them well. Nick Fury was no impulsive man. While it might be useless, not even putting in the effort was a matter of attitude. Don't worry, everything's been arranged, Coulson assured him. The plane door opened, and the first to descend were the American inspectors. They greeted Coulson with pleasantries, deliberately creating a peaceful atmosphere and trying to prevent the others from getting angry. What? A treat? Ha 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 ha, I must see it. I guarantee everyone will be satisfied, Coulson said with a conspiratorial smile. But then someone, a man dedicated to slapping him in the face, stepped down with white hair. Vank, with a firm voice, said, "We're going to the Triskelion building now." Despite his age, Vank was full of energy. He had come on behalf of Russia for no other reason than to pick a fight. Vank, you've been flying all day. I'm sure you're tired. Take a break. The American reviewer chuckled. There's no rush for work. Who said there's no rush? The British team leader scoffed. If SHIELD doesn't have these problems for so many years, how can we justify the dues we've paid to it? With 2 votes in favor, the American team leader turned his gaze to the Gallic leader behind him, a hint of coldness in his eyes. The Gallic leader, as usual, looked around and said something else. The weather in Washington is really nice. The American team leader then turned his attention to the bespectacled young Asian man at the end, trying to pressure this man, who clearly had gotten in through the back door. Lin Hao, wearing his glasses again and now assuming the role of director of SHIELD's technical development department, ignored his gaze and yawned lazily. I'll go to SHIELD to check in first. Afterward, I'm going back to the hotel to sleep. With 3 votes in favor, the American investigators were left with no choice but to follow. The others had already gone, and if they didn't intervene, SHIELD would be in even worse straits. Seeing this, Phil Coulson had no choice but to arrange a vehicle while urgently contacting Nick Fury. Boss, that won't work. They'll be here soon. Nick Fury sighed. Bring them here. The joint investigation team consisted of personnel from 5 countries, each team comprising professional researchers, financial auditors, and intelligence analysts, responsible for scrutinizing SHIELD's operations. Lin Hao represented SHIELD and led the Chinese investigators. Vank was temporarily acting as SHIELD's technical advisor. He knew his son wasn't dead, but he couldn't help but feel the urge to vent his anger. The convoy arrived at the Triskelion building, where Nick Fury personally greeted them. His demeanor was much more reserved, offering only a polite smile. Welcome everyone. If there's anything you can do to help us with the work, please let me know. If I'm busy, Coulson will accommodate any requests, no need for formalities. We'll investigate all of SHIELD's problems. Vanko stepped forward, staring intently at Nick Fury. He had no personal vendetta against Black Braznag when Vanko was active. Nick Fury was still wearing open crotch pants and playing in the mud, so there was no personal vendetta. But he harbored a deep resentment towards SHIELD, having been tricked by Howard Stark once before. If SHIELD hadn't come knocking on his door, he would have died of overwork and depression. Nick Fury recognized him and knew he was up to no good. Please, everyone. We've cleared a floor for you to use as office space. Please let Coulson know if you need anything. He glanced at the harmless Lin Hao, a glint of brilliance in his single eye. Through his mole within SHIE, he naturally had superficial information on Lin Hao, knowing that he was the director of SHIE's technology department and a talented young scientist. Beyond that, he knew nothing more. When Lin Hao went out on field missions as Big Devil, he wore a metal mask and altered his height and build. Only a few close researchers in the technical development department, judging by his confrontational style, vaguely suspected that Big Devil and Director Lin might be the same person. The only people who knew Lin Hao's true appearance were Zheng Xian, his immediate superior, and now, Wanda and Pietro. When it came to concealing his identity, Lin Hao was even more of an agent than Black Brazneg. After gathering the investigation team to his office, Nick Fury excused himself to leave. Big Hair, England, and the men Lin Hao had brought with him didn't hesitate, ordering Kelson to provide detailed financial reports for the past years and begin a review. Despite delays by the American investigators and the Galaxy lacking, the other three parties steadily advanced the audit. Having already borrowed money, Black Sauce Egg wasn't worried about any accounting issues. While he did embezzle funds, now that the money was back, no one could bring it up. In a powerful department like this, as the head, one naturally has certain authority to access funds. Otherwise, everything would be hampered, and how could efficiency be expected? After a day of auditing, the financial auditors failed to uncover any major flaws, aside from minor, insignificant issues. Back at the hotel arranged by S.H.I.E.L.D. that evening, Aunt Vank arrived at Lin Hao's room and looked around. "Director Lin, is this a good place to talk? Nick Fury wouldn't be foolish enough to bug the hotel and challenge our professionalism," Lin Hao said with a smile. Since he's already borrowed money to fill the financial hole, and the biggest problem is gone, he certainly won't add unnecessary layers. The people present were all professionals from the 5 major countries. If they couldn't detect their peers' involvement, they might as well quit. Even Americans wouldn't appreciate a room filled with cameras and bugs. Nick Fury wouldn't be foolish enough to bother himself with such trivial matters. Now everyone knows that Big Mao has formed an alliance with a nanny in the south, and that the Spear Bureau and the Bear Shield Bureau are working closely together. It would be strange if Aunt Vank didn't come to visit. If so, Aunt Vank frowned. "How can we bring him down?" Lin Hao smiled slightly. Seeing this, Aunt Vank suddenly realized, "I was worrying too much?" It turns out that Director Lin has already made arrangements. At the same time, Gideon Malik, one of the elders of Hydra and the head of the Malik family, brought his agents to a closed cold storage. A man was frozen in the cold storage. The man had messy long hair that was longer than his ears, and half of his face was covered by a mask. The most eye-catching thing was his left arm, a metal arm with a red star printed on it. Second update. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143. You fell down before I even used any strength. Gazing at the Winter Soldier in the cold storage, Gideon Malik ordered his men, "Wake him up." They brought the Winter Soldier out of the cold storage and thawed him using thawing technology. Then, taking a red leather notebook, they began reciting commands. Each Winter Soldier had a different command and permissions, adjusted based on the Awakener and the mission level, to prevent loss of control. But each had a core command, a voice-activated switch. Bucky's core command, for example, was the Russian word for longing. Longing, a Hydra agent whispered softly into Bucky's ear. Bucky's eyes flickered open on the metal rack. Immediately, the Hydra agent called out, "Rust, 17, Dawn, Furnace, 9, Kindness, Home, 1, Truck." Bucky, like a machine regaining power, began to throb. "Go. This is your target." The Hydra agent handed over the photo and information. Malik actually preferred to assassinate Alexander Pierce directly, but Pierce also held the Winter Soldier's highest authority, preventing him from issuing assassination orders. This was a protective procedure for those in authority. He hoped that this assassination would alert SHIELD to the continued presence of Hydra agents. Since Pierce's influence was primarily concentrated within SHIELD and the American government, he would be the first target for suspicion and elimination. This was a scheme to kill with a borrowed knife. The Joint Investigation Team's hotel was not far from the Triskelion building. SHIELD had assigned 2 commercial vehicles to each nationality's investigators, accompanied by armed agents. As the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., was a common sight on the streets, and residents had become accustomed to seeing such motorcades. The White House had been attacked twice, the second time completely burned down. Although reconstruction efforts were underway to restore America's reputation, many wealthy individuals chose to leave this dangerous place. Consequently, Washington's population had plummeted over the past year, and businesses were also relocating. Aside from those who couldn't afford to relocate, Everyone who could afford it had left. I always heard people say America has a vast territory and a sparse population, but I didn't expect even the capital is like this. An auditor from the SHIEA side, looking at the empty streets. Haha, you don't go out on field work, so you don't know. Another colleague in charge of intelligence analysis laughed and said, the Americans are scared. Last year, the White House was hit twice in a row, and the surrounding blocks were directly destroyed by artillery fire. The high-rise buildings collapsed. The wealthy people have already moved away. Is there such a thing? Several colleagues gathered around, asking in a flurry. We've only seen some rumors online, and the photos and videos are very blurry. These colleagues were all clerks at the SHIEA, without intelligence clearance, so they certainly didn't know as much as the colleagues in charge of intelligence analysis. Tell us about it, tell us about it. Isn't this information considered internal secrets? Everyone was excited at the opportunity to get a glimpse of the American secrets. The colleague in charge of intelligence analysis turned to the team leader, Lin Hao. Seeing he didn't stop them, they enthusiastically spread the news. Last year, two people arranged a fight at the top of the White House. You should have seen this news online on Wall Street. Lin Hao, who had been silent until then, suddenly spoke up. Hold on tight. He then shouted to the driver, Old Lee, turn right, turn right. Without a word, the driver immediately turned right. A car behind them hurriedly followed. With a loud bang, the leading shield vehicle was suddenly hit by a metal road bollard and overturned. The rearmost vehicle was hit by a flying magnetic bomb, exploding in flames and overturning. A motorcycle came straight from the perpendicular street, looked up to see if it was there, and after a moment, it chased the shield vehicle. Interesting, they're coming for me. Lin Hao was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. Although he had a plan, others were not mindless puppets and would react in their own way. Malik's choice to assassinate him or someone from SHIELD was likely intended to provoke SHIELD's wrath, further intensifying their investigation of SHIELD, and ultimately, uncover some clues he had deliberately left behind, ultimately eliminating Alexander Pierce. It was a masterful job, as Lin Hao had the same intention. However, Director Lin had even greater ambitions. Besides exposing the Malik family and eliminating them, he also wanted to target Nick Fury and allow Pierce's clone to completely control the new SHIELD director. I'll do it. A SHIELD agent pushed open the door and jumped out of the car. The five-nation investigation team would inevitably include security personnel. While Zheng Xian wasn't at all concerned for Lin Hao's safety, preserving his official identity required a backup. Shen Bing jumped out of the car, landing gracefully in the middle of the road, waiting leisurely for Bucky to drive over. Bucky glanced at him, but didn't slow down. He simply tilted the handlebars, freeing his left metal arm. He had faith in his own strength. With over 60 years of experience, the Asian boy before him would surely be unable to withstand this punch. Shen Bing smiled. He was determined to teach this guy a lesson he'd never forget. The moment they crossed paths, Bucky swung his fist, and Shen Bing extended his palm, slicing along the metal surface before slicing fiercely at his elbow. A crack startled both men. Bucky marveled that a single palm had sliced through his metal arm, while Shen Bing marveled at its sturdiness. It didn't break. Stomping down, twisting his waist, and exerting his strength, Shen Bing grabbed Bucky's metal arm with both hands and threw him to the ground with an over-the-shoulder throw. Bucky soared into the air, bewildered. What happened? Where am I? Why is this guy so strong? Bucky's right hand didn't loosen its grip on the handlebars, lifting the entire motorcycle, its wheels still spinning at high speed. Shen Bing raised his left foot and kicked the motorcycle, sending it flying onto the sidewalk and smashing into two trash cans. After knocking him down, Shen Bing pressed on with a flurry of Wing Chun inch punches, leaving Bucky dizzy. A torrential downpour of punches came at him, and before Bucky could react, the internal force contained in the punches destroyed his consciousness. His eyes rolled back, and he fainted. Tisk, I thought you were that powerful. Shen Bing felt a pulse on his neck, and only after making sure that he had lost consciousness did he straighten up, with undisguised contempt on his face. I haven't even used any strength, and you fell down. Lin Hao came over with the others, frowning as he looked at Bucky who was unconscious on the ground. The plan had some minor fluctuations, but it wasn't a big problem. Director, should we take the person away, or? Shen Bing looked at Lin Hao. Leave it to SHIELD, and just watch the fun. Lin Hao smiled. Other vehicles that noticed the movement rushed over quickly. The third update. Chapter 144 Bucky, is that you? I'm Steve. Upon learning that the Joint Investigation Team's convoy had been attacked, Nick Fury was shocked. What did you say? They were attacked. Maria Hill, finally getting a chance to speak, held up a tablet and displayed the footage to the director. The convoy was attacked by mysterious armed men. There was only one man, and his skills. Hill hesitated slightly, then said carefully, "Isn't he okay?" His tone was filled with uncertainty. Nick Fury watched the brief exchange between Bucky and Shenbing, his face darkening. It's not that he's incompetent, it's that the SHIELD people are too strong. Seeing Shenbing, he was finally convinced that the SHIELD must have other internal energy cultivating techniques. Shenbing's leap from the car was so effortless, his bare hands capable of breaking metal, a testament to his inner energy cultivation. Damn Shen ran, he refuses to cooperate, Nick Fury raged. If his old partner had agreed to continue working together, he would now have access to a method for cultivating internal energy without inflicting any injuries, which would undoubtedly greatly enhance SHIELD's strength. Wait, who did this? Nick Fury suddenly realized. Could it be one of our own? Faced with a joint investigation team, there were naturally dissenting voices within SHIELD. They had long been accustomed to hegemony, so how could they possibly accept scrutiny and oversight? In such powerful departments, too many people, from top to bottom, had their own black hands. Even local police departments recruited informants, let alone a behemoth like SHIELD. Finding someone to scare the team members into behaving in a way that made them behave was practically a traditional tactic used by local tyrants to resist investigations. Not setting fire to the hotel was already considered quite restrained. That shouldn't be the case, Hill said, gesturing to the two escort vehicles in front and behind. Our own people have been killed or injured. There's no need for the people in the agency to go to such lengths. Indeed, Nick Fury nodded in agreement, then pressed, where are the people? Who has them? The SHIELD people handed them over to us, but the Joint Investigation Team unanimously requested to intervene in the interrogation. Hill let out a sigh. Even our own people are keeping silent. The assassination was extremely egregious. The attitudes of SHIELD, B-Shield, and the British were obvious. The Gallic forces, who had always been lax, finally spoke out. Even the Americans themselves suspected SHIELD of a self-torture scheme, and they worried that some mad idiot would kill them as well. Now that SHIELD personnel were dead, there was no doubt that the self-torture scheme would be even more convincing. Investigate, Nick Fury said without hesitation. Investigate openly and transparently. Beyond his stance, he also wanted to know who had done it. An unconscious Bucky was brazenly carried into the Triskelion. After SHIELD took over, they wanted to put a hood on him, but Lin Hao refused, citing the possibility that his accomplices might reappear. He even removed his gas mask, revealing his true appearance. The large group entered the Triskelion, drawing the attention of every agent in the ground floor lobby. "Captain, you can rest for 2 days after this mission," Crossbones said to the fake captain with a smile. Crossbones knew the so-called Captain America was a complete sham. He had personally lifted him from the metal cabinet and placed him on the plane's control yoke. Consequently, he felt particularly cordial towards the fake captain, no longer holding any grudges. The fake captain, sensing his sincerity, also thought the young man was a good person. They had just returned from the Gulf of Aden, where they had rescued a ship hijacked by pirates, a scene specially orchestrated by Alexander Pierce. It's just the right time to catch up on some lessons. The day before yesterday, a new friend told me that Marvin Gaye wrote a song for Black Hand. The fake captain hadn't finished his words when he saw Bucky being carried in. This face was a memory that haunted him. "Bucky," the fake captain shouted, suddenly rushed over, hugged the unconscious friend in his memory, and couldn't contain his excitement. "Bucky, is that you?" "I'm Steve." Seeing Bucky's deformed left hand in his unconscious state, the fake captain hurriedly asked the SHIELD personnel who were carrying him, "What's wrong with him? What happened to him, Captain? Don't you recognize him?" The SHIELD agent who was carrying him was numb and incoherent. "Wow, it seems that the attacker's accomplices have really jumped out," Aunt Vanko gloated, watching the excitement without fear of trouble. The officers from SHIELD and SHIELD all wore ambiguous smiles. The British investigators scowled, the Gallic roosters looked like they were watching the fun, and the American officers wore gloomy, complex expressions. The fake captain was completely lost in the excitement of suddenly meeting his best friend. Crossbones, sensing the eerie atmosphere, took on the responsibility of being a good friend and quickly questioned his SHIELD colleague. What happened to him? Why were you bringing him back? The SHIELD agent carrying the man replied with a bitter face. This man attacked the Joint Investigation Team's convoy, killing 5 of us and sending 4 more to the hospital with serious injuries. What? The fake captain finally snapped. Whenever it came to Bucky, Steve Rogers lost his principles. American freedom came first to Captain America, which is why he refused to sign the Sokovia Accords, which restricted superheroes. Bucky came second, and so he stood by his brother unconditionally, even after he killed the King of Wakanda and Howard Stark, with whom he had a close relationship. Everything else came third. The same thing happened to the fake captain, who completely replicated Steve's personality and possessed his memories. Upon hearing Bucky attack the investigation team's convoy, he quickly demanded, "Why? Why would Bucky do this, Captain? Do you really know this guy?" the SHIELD agent said in a final, desperate attempt. "Of course, it's Bucky, my best friend," the fake captain insisted. "Interesting, so interesting," Aunt Vanko mused, "I can't wait. I really want to know the story behind this. Let's go. It's time to go to the interrogation room," the SHIELD leader in charge ordered with a sullen face. The fake captain was naturally uneasy about Bucky participating in the interrogation, eager to learn where he had been and what he had endured over the years. So, he brazenly forced his way into the interrogation, but no amount of SHIELD agents' persuasion would sway him. In desperation, after consulting Nick Fury, he took the fake captain to the interrogation room. Bucky was tied to the metal table in the interrogation room. SHIELD agents tried to rouse him by force, but the fake captain, standing nearby, refused to cooperate and pushed them away. The fake captain held a wet towel and carefully wiped his good brother's face in one intact hand. Seeing the dense scars on his body, he couldn't help but feel sad. "Bucky, what have you been through?" At this moment, Bucky opened his eyes. Their eyes met, and a gay passion surged. Chapter 145, Bucky, Hail Hydra. Bucky opened his eyes and saw a face etched in his memory. His consciousness hadn't completely dissipated, but with each hypnosis session, the brainwashing program would overwhelm his self-awareness. It was like when summer vacation came, a diligent little figure would appear in his mind, encouraging him to finish his summer homework in a week, while a lazy little figure would tempt him to go out and play and do his homework later. Then they got into a fight, and the diligent little figure was beaten to death. It wasn't until the last few days of summer that the diligent little figure was revived under pressure from teachers and parents. Bucky's self-awareness was now that of the slain diligent little figure, and he could only hide in a corner, staring at Steve's face and crying silently. The cold gaze stung the fake captain, and he let out a mournful cry, "Bucky!" Dujun wept blood. Seeing his idol so distressed, Phil Coulson quickly stepped forward to offer his comfort. "Captain, rest up there. I'll ask him some questions. I'm sure you'd like to learn more about him." Steve was ushered aside, and Coulson began his interrogation. "Is your name James Barnes?" Coulson stared at him intently, desperately hoping for a rebuttal, even if it meant he was from another universe, like the other Steve Rogers who had appeared before. Bucky remained silent, neither nodding nor shaking his head. He had become a cold, emotionless machine. The SHIELD team struggled for a long time, but to no avail. The interrogator remained completely unresponsive. "Haha, I didn't expect SHIELD to be so civilized now," Anton Vanko, a former SHIELD employee, sneered. "Are all those empty spaces on the walls of the interrogation room decorative tiles? How about we break a couple of them open and see what's hidden inside?" The British team leader also spoke out. "If this so-called interrogation is just a formality, I don't think it's necessary. The results are already in front of everyone." "Coulson, let's get serious." Nick Fury, who had rushed over to take control of the situation, spoke up. "But, Captain," Coulson turned back to look at the fake captain. The fake captain was startled and immediately enraged. "No, don't even think about it, Captain. Consider the overall situation." "He's already..." Coulson was interrupted by the Winter Soldier, who suddenly shouted a line that silenced the entire audience. "Hail Hydra!" Coulson turned sharply, staring at Bucky intently. The fake captain was also in disbelief. No one at the scene, except Lin Hao, had expected to hear such a statement. "Did I hear correctly? Did he just chant a spell? Impossible. Wasn't he already destroyed long ago?" and Vanko was overjoyed. He immediately rushed to the console, pushed aside the stunned SHIELD agent, and played the recording back, turning the volume up high. Hydra, long live, this time everyone could hear clearly. Hydra? Are they still out there? Impossible, the Americans immediately jumped in to refute. Hydra was destroyed by Captain America over 60 years ago. All their bases were bombed. This is a fact recognized by the Allies. This was Marvel Universe America's greatest historical achievement during World War II. When the energy weapons developed by Arnim Zola were first deployed, they inflicted heavy casualties on the Allied forces on the Western Front, nearly retaking the line lost by Sanzhi. It was during this attack that Bucky's 107th Infantry Regiment was annihilated, becoming Hydra's prisoners of war. The Hydra forces that achieved victory were limited to a single base, as Red Skull hadn't yet consolidated his forces across various bases. It was Steve Rogers who single-handedly broke into Red Skull's base, leveraging his prowess as a hero to repel him, rescue a large number of prisoners, including Bucky, and capture Red Skull's energy weapon, thus securing the necessary leverage for a counterattack. Later, relying on Steve's memorization of the Hydra base's locations, the Allies concentrated their firepower, preempting Red Skull's forces by bombing numerous bases and nipping the threat in the bud. Otherwise, the Allied forces on the Western Front would have been reduced to rubble by Hydra's energy weapons, much like Bucky's infantry regiment. The real-world Americans, needless to say, in the Marvel Universe, relied on Steve Rogers' Howling Commandos, employing decapitation tactics, to turn the tide of the war in Europe and destroy the threatening Red Skull army. This is why Captain America is recorded in the World History section of history books around the world. It's the feat Marvel attributes to America and Captain America. It was thanks to this war, this feat, that America ascended to the throne of supremacy, stepping on the ashes of European empires. It can be said that the destruction of Hydra is one of the legal principles underlying American hegemony in the Marvel Universe. Now, someone is telling them that Hydra hasn't been destroyed. This is shaking their very foundations. He's lying. This is a conspiracy. American investigators no longer care about their original censorship duties, only to control the source of the rumors. In the original story, Captain America personally revealed the news of Hydra's continued existence, and because of his identity, everyone believed it. Otherwise, Hydra, having infiltrated the American hierarchy, could have suppressed it or used smokescreens to divert attention. This is a standard method of public opinion control. Because Captain America personally exposed and destroyed Project Insight, the inside story remained hidden. This allowed America to hype Captain America and his own achievements, turning waste into treasure, and portraying negligence as foresight. Not only would it not undermine America's prestige, it would also prove America's eternal glory, greatness, and correctness. But now, conspiracy, and Vanko sneered. Whose conspiracy? He's Captain America's best friend. All four nations, except the American, gave meaningful looks. Bang, 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 boom. Suddenly, a burst of gunfire and explosions erupted from the Triskelion. What's going on? Nick Fury shuddered, picking up his phone and immediately contacting several of his closest associates. What's going on? Where are you, boss? A group of colleagues are suddenly rioting in the building. They're heavily armed and attacking the interrogation room, Grant Ward, who remained outside, reported. He was the adopted son of Hydra agent John Garrett and affiliated with Alexander Pierce's faction. Unbeknownst to Ward, the rioters were actually Pierce's men. To be more precise, they were Pierce's men planted under Gideon Malik. Malik had always believed that these were his own people, but he had no idea that they were undercover agents who had been hiding for 3 years. Since Malik had already jumped out in advance, Pierce's clone and Lin Hao behind the scenes simply went along with it. Boom. The wall of the interrogation room was blown down again, and smoke and dust rose up. Nick Fury had few agents around him to begin with, and he had to stay behind to protect the members of the joint investigation team. He could only watch them rescue the Winter Soldier. Bucky, the fake captain, rushed forward, but was knocked back by Bucky's intact right fist. Lin Hao and the crowd saw clearly that the fake captain's move was partly an act. As expected, whenever Bucky was involved, Steve Rogers would definitely forget his principles temporarily. This group of Mission Impossible took Bucky and quickly left the Triskelion building, boarding the helicopter prepared outside and fled. But they left a huge mess for Nick Fury, SHIELD, and even the United States. The fifth update. Chapter 146 Taking over SHIELD and internally interrogating Nick Fury. News of Hydra's reappearance wasn't made public, but the top brass of the 5 major nations were all aware, leading to a pressing question. Why was Hydra involved with SHIELD? Interesting, truly interesting, the big hairy representative scoffed in the conference room. So we've been paying Hydra for years. Why did Hydra infiltrate SHIELD? The Asian representative, serious, got to the point. When did they infiltrate? Or has Hydra been involved since the very beginning of SHIELD? Impossible, the American representative exclaimed. That's a gross slander. Have you forgotten Operation Paperclip? The British representative bristled at the mere mention of this. They had held out for years as Europe's isolated fortress, only to be reaped the fruits of victory, only to be snatched away by America, who had snatched up all the good stuff. After being brought back to America, Arnim Zola has been working at SHIELD for nearly 30 years, having been with the agency since its founding. This, the American representative faltered, quibbling, is just an isolated case. The sudden appearance of a spy within SHIELD today to kidnap Bucky proves this isn't an isolated incident. The Gallic representative, in a rare display of pointed commentary, made a rare and pointed statement. The American representative glanced around at the other 4, feeling a sense of panic. This was the first time they had been targeted by the 4 great powers. They had previously dominated this conference room. However, Hydra's rebirth through reincarnation had already crossed the other 4 nations' boundaries. Even Eastern nations, less affected by Hydra, were attempting to seize this opportunity to restructure SHIELD. Realizing this, the American representative knew the situation was irreversible. They had initially promoted SHIELD as an international organization, leveraging other people's funds to expand their intelligence network and control. Now, with problems like this, they were forced to accept the consequences of these rules. Unless they completely ripped off their relationship and became isolated worldwide. For the sake of SHIELD, it's not worth it. Since the joint investigation team is here, I propose that the 5 team leaders temporarily take over command of SHIELD and be responsible for clearing out the remaining Hydra elements within. The Asian face revealed its true intentions. During this period, SHIELD will cease all external activities. Agreed, the British representative immediately declared. Agreed, the Gallic representative followed suit. I have no objection either, the Gallic representative said, making a rare statement. The situation was hopeless, and the American representative could only remain silent. The representatives of the World Security Council naturally represented the attitudes of the countries behind them. Upon learning the outcome, the American elite eagle remained silent for a moment before making his decision. SHIELD will be saved if we can, but if we can't, we'll just change the name. The remnants of Hydra must be eliminated, and the remaining clean personnel can be absorbed into the new organization. If we continue to operate under the World Security Council, I think they'll take the opportunity to recruit more personnel. We have no other options. We've been spending too much money domestically lately. So we have no choice but to continue to rely on international funding. Besides, we already have SHIELD and EASHIELD, and now there's a magic school in England. If we abandon the World Security Council, they'll definitely take advantage of the situation and disband, divide up SHIELD's legacy, and demand back dues from us. The elite eagles fell silent. If a company is heavily in debt and wants to avoid repayment, what's the best way? Borrow more money to keep it afloat. As long as the company exists, creditors can't initiate bankruptcy liquidation. Thus, the 5 major powers reached a rare consensus. On this little blue sphere, if the 5 major rogues agree, nothing is impossible. SHIELD, the Triskelion building, the office floor Nick Fury had prepared for the joint investigation team, had suddenly become the highest authority. Everyone should have received the order. In that case, let's put aside other work and start clearing out the remnants of Hydra. The British team leader was the first to break the silence. Naturally, the others had no objection, and Lin Hao was happy to watch the fun. Various countries urgently transferred professional internal auditors from their own intelligence agencies to form a new review team and began to thoroughly investigate all agents of SHIELD. The first person to be internally audited was Director Nick Fury. In his decades-long career as an agent, Black Brazen Egg had been investigated and even interrogated many times, so he was not panicked at all. Nick Fury was born in Alabama on July 4, 1950. After graduating from high school, he joined the U.S. Army and was promoted to colonel. He retired during the Cold War and joined the CIA as a spy. He joined SHIELD in the 1980s. The Asian internal auditor was naturally from the SHIELD and had also received instructions from Zheng Xian and Lin Hao to take the opportunity to spy on something. He flipped through the file on black braised egg and said with a smile, "I have to admit, your 60-year file is a bit thin." Nick Fury, naturally, was not easily intimidated. He crossed his legs and folded his hands on his knees. Although he looked relaxed, he was actually taking it seriously. "Excuse me, your experience before joining SHIELD is a national secret of the United States, so it will not be recorded in the SHIELD archives. I'm very sorry." The internal auditor from SHIELD smiled. "This time, we have received orders to eliminate the remnants of Hydra, so the past experience of every SHIELD agent must be thoroughly investigated. This is an operation decided by the 5 major powers." Nick Fury's single eye narrowed slightly. The SHIELD guy clearly had the words unfriendly written on his face. On January 28, 1968, you, a recent recruit, accompanied SHIELD agents from what was then the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Agency, SHDALA, on an operation in Nepal. The SHIELD internal auditor revealed his true intentions. "We need to know the details of that operation and the personnel involved." Nick Fury was shocked, but with the shrewdness of a master agent, he suppressed his emotions and remained silent. He hadn't expected SHIELD to pinpoint that exact time. How could this be possible? It was clearly a classified operation. He was chosen for that operation simply because he had just joined the army and had a clean record. He didn't understand it at the time, but later realized that his group of soldiers were simply cannon fodder. It was precisely because of his outstanding performance in that operation, surviving the end, that he, a black man, was able to rise rapidly in the era of racism, reaching the rank of colonel. Then, through SHIELD's covert arrangement, he joined the CIA to gain experience, and eventually transferred to SHIELD, where he was promoted and steadily climbed the career ladder. Come on, it's been 42 years, how could I possibly remember it so clearly? Besides, I was just a soldier at the time, Nick Fury chuckled. Chapter 147 Black Braised Egg was frightened. "No way," the internal investigator from the SHIE chuckled. "This is your first mission since joining the military. Shouldn't any first time be remembered vividly, sir?" The CIA internal investigator, temporarily transferred from the agency, stepped forward to defend his own team. "Chu, my last name is Chu." Zhu Yang was an older intelligence officer and a professional internal investigator. He had uncovered numerous moles planted by foreign forces and even personally arrested his own superiors. While this was common practice in the intelligence field, personally backstabbing his superiors made Zhu Yang an anomaly within the system. That's when Zheng Xian asked him to join the SHIE's internal mole hunting team. "Okay, Mr. Chu," objected Chris Cooper from the CIA. "Nick's military experience is irrelevant to this review. If you can't provide specific information, who says I can't?" Zhu Yang pulled a document from his briefcase and disclosed it directly. The operation Nick Fury participated in 1968 was a secret mission SHIELD carried out to acquire Hydra scientist Mira Hitzig. The intelligence officers from the other 4 countries, including Chris, took the materials and began to review them, astonished by SHIELD's intelligence capabilities. A covert operation that took place 42 years ago, carried out by the then powerful world power, the United States, had its true intentions discovered by a nation often considered backward. It was simply unbelievable. Either there was a traitor among the American operatives, or SHIELD was also targeting Mira Hitzig. You may not know this, but Mira Hitzig is Arnim Zola's former colleague. The two worked together under Red Skull for many years, Zhu Yang continued. During Operation Paperclip, SHIELD recruited Arnim Zola. Over 20 years later, they tracked down Mira Hitzig and attempted to bring her back to SHIELD. Does everyone still believe Nick Fury's 1968 operation is unrelated to our current mission? Director Fury, please elaborate. Sergei Markov of SHIELD regarded Nick Fury with interest. The veteran intelligence officers present could already discern that the SHIELD agents were interrogating Nick Fury with other motives, perhaps simply testing his reactions to extract the information they needed. The intelligence officers from the three countries were enjoying the spectacle. They would have been even happier if the Americans in NATO had come to blows. The CIA naturally didn't want the SHIE-8 to take the lead, but they presented solid evidence proving that Nick Fury's first mission was linked to Hydra, meeting the requirements of this joint review. Deliberately disrupting things would only backfire. Seeing the five nations' consensus, Nick Fury was helpless. After a moment's silence, he spoke. We were heading to a castle at the foot of Mount Everest's south slope, attempting to rescue Mira Hitzig. He began to detail the operation 42 years prior. As Zhu Yang had said, this was his first mission, and he had a particularly vivid memory of it. Not to mention the bizarre dangers he encountered during that mission, which still haunted him in his dreams, even after all these years. At that time, we didn't know who Mira was serving. Now think about it, maybe he was still serving the Hydra that had not been destroyed. Because we were attacked by a reinforced soldier. He was not the one who was arrested yesterday. But his strength was not much different from his. We are just ordinary soldiers. There are no super-powered people among the SHIELD personnel. In the end, we suffered heavy casualties. Although we successfully rescued Mira, we were trapped in a valley covered with heavy snow. We used the last radio to contact our superiors and got approval to abandon the mission. Then the SHIELD people killed Mira and then evacuated separately. I was lucky. I met a herder family in Nepal and survived. Pa. Zhu Yang suddenly applauded. As expected of SHIELD's king of agents, you've mastered the art of avoiding the important and focusing on the trivial. Zhu Yang sneered. No wonder your annual funding applications are so impeccable. Let me ask you. Zhu Yang's gaze suddenly sharpened, his aura intimidating. Besides enhanced soldiers, have you encountered any other dangerous creatures? Not just Earth creatures, Mr. Chu. Are you saying I encountered alien creatures 42 years ago? Nick Fury suddenly laughed. Your imagination could fill you with novels or comics. He had recovered from the surprise of SHIELD learning about the mission 42 years ago and immediately concluded they were trying to alert the enemy. If SHIELD knew more, there would be no need for such a fuss. They simply wanted to know which SHIELD agents had participated in the mission, or more precisely, who had survived. As expected, Zhu Yang's next question was, since you said the operation resulted in heavy losses, then there must have been few survivors. After going through a life-or-death ordeal together, you wouldn't even know their names or faces, right? I remember, Nick Fury answered readily. I was the only one from the military who survived. There were 3 other SHIELD agents before they dispersed and fled. I think they were named Franca, Matt, and Doug. That's how they introduced themselves. I'm not sure if those were their real names. Nick Fury gave Zhu Yang a playful smile. All 3 of them were white, unafraid. Every intelligence officer sensed Nick Fury's arrogance. Zhu Yang, naturally, sensed it too. He gave Nick Fury a final look and smiled. I'm done. Unafraid is also a form of attitude. The interrogation of Nick Fury lasted all day. Representatives from the 5 major powers took turns questioning him about his experiences over the past 40 years. Director Lin, your plan to alert the enemy doesn't seem to be working. After returning to the hotel, Zhu Yang found Lin Hao and complained, we still can't confirm who the mole is among the high-ranking agents, nor are we sure it originated from the 1968 operation as you said. Don't worry. You think Nick Fury wasn't frightened, but I think he was, Lin Hao said with a smile. Seeing Lin Hao's certainty, Zhu Yang guessed something. Is it because of the alien creature you specifically asked me to bring up? Lin Hao didn't answer, just smiled. Nick Fury, the person they were discussing, returned to his official home after a long day of interrogation. He turned on the TV to watch Tom and Jerry. Tom was being teased by Jerry, and his skin popped off, revealing his naked body. Far away in the outer space of the solar system, on a Skrull spaceship, Talos received a signal from Nick Fury. Then, in the cartoon, Jerry suddenly ran to the safe, quickly opened it, and threw out a large green bill. The face of Black Braze Doug immediately turned black. Talos's meaning was very clear, this time the job would cost more. Nick Fury had no choice but to continue watching Tom and Jerry until he finished watching 2 episodes before turning it off and going to the bathroom to take a shower. Talos on the spaceship smiled, not bad, it's rare to get more money out of his pocket. Second update. Chapter 148 The fish begins to move. SHIELD's internal review affected all rostered agents, but interestingly, the false captain, Crossbones, Black Widow, Maria Hill, and Sharon Carter were assigned to the front of the group. While their ranks were certainly high within S.H.I.E.L.D., the fact that they all completed the first round of reviews within 3 days seemed somewhat calculated. "I think the higher-ups are definitely trying to get us to do something," said Crossbones, the only one with the right perspective, acting as a go-between. Upon hearing this, the false captain's eyes flickered. He remembered how Nick Fury had suddenly appeared at his apartment 3 days prior, the night before the internal review was set to begin, handed him a USB drive, and told him not to trust anyone. The false captain had retorted, "You already know Bucky's a Hydra assassin, so why would you trust me?" Nick Fury replied, "Because you're Captain America." At that moment, the false captain sensed a glimmer of sincerity from this old fox, realizing how Captain America had become a true icon for some old-school figures over the past 60 years. For example, Phil Coulson's admiration for him was genuine. Faced with no one to trust, Nick Fury still chose to place his bets on Captain America. This identity naturally lent him the trust of the old-school Americans. To uncover Bucky's past and live up to this trust, the fake captain decided to take action. After a meeting with several agents, the fake captain left alone and found an internet cafe. He turned on his computer and tried to insert a USB drive. A hand stopped him, and Natasha Romanoff laughed. "You don't think you can just plug this USB drive in and use it, do you?" The USB drive was the data Natasha had personally copied from a hijacked cruise ship during a recent rescue operation they had participated in. "What's wrong with you?" the fake captain asked, bewildered. "You're not cut out to be an agent." Natasha shook her head and smiled. "You don't know how to conceal your thoughts, and you don't know how to shake off followers." Natasha took the USB drive, pushed the fake captain aside, installed a program on the computer, and then inserted the USB drive. The USB drive contains a level 6 tracking and positioning program. "Once we use it, the Bureau will know our location. How much time do we have?" The fake captain began staring outside the internet cafe. "About 9 minutes, Natasha began working on her computer. "But the Bureau has ceased external activities. With luck, we might not be discovered. If we're unlucky, we'll face the pursuit of the Joint Investigation Team. There's something wrong with that ship we visited earlier." Natasha frowned as she saw the windows popping up repeatedly on the USB drive. "This USB drive is protected by artificial intelligence. It's constantly rewriting the program, undoing the commands I entered. Can you fix it?" The fake captain, being an old-fashioned person, didn't quite understand. "The people who developed this thing are just a little smarter than me," Natasha emphasized. "Just a little." Meanwhile, SHIELD had discovered the activation of the tracking program, but Agent Sitwell, who hadn't yet participated in the review, quietly suppressed the matter. After deliberately delaying for a few minutes, she reported it to the Joint Investigation Team. He was Alexandra Pierce's assistant, the bald man with the glasses in the movie, who was ultimately snatched from a speeding car by the Winter Soldier and thrown off an overpass to his death. Tracking program. Anton Vanko, a technician not responsible for internal personnel investigations, stayed in the Joint Investigation Team's office, waiting to see what was happening. What kind of tracking program? What classified materials were contained within the carrier? He had also previously worked at SHIELD. Sitwell, naturally, wouldn't hide anything from the Joint Investigation Team and replied honestly, "A level 6 program, meaning the classified materials contained within the carrier are level 6, interesting. They've suspended external activities, yet someone's still secretly stirring things up." Anton Vanko, eager to watch the action, fanned the flames. "I think it's most likely remnants of Hydra. Send them after them," the British team leader said. "We can't use SHIELD personnel this time. Let's use our own security personnel and issue them SHIELD credentials." "Okay, it's our duty to fight Hydra," Lin Hao declared solemnly. Shen Bing, a member of the SHIELD, joined the pursuit of the fake captain and Natasha, but they were already one step too late. By the time they arrived at the internet cafe where the signal originated, the fake captain and Natasha had already rented a used car and headed for New Jersey. On the way, the fake captain, driving, asked Natasha in the passenger seat, "Why did you get involved?" "Bucky's my friend, so I have to go." "But you don't." Natasha's eyes suddenly dimmed, and after a moment's silence, she replied, "I thought I was doing the right thing by joining SHIELD, but I never expected Hydra to be involved. I want to find out whether it's just a small group of spies, or whether SHIELD has been completely corrupted." This was crucial to Natasha. Her brazen destruction of the Red Room wasn't just revenge, but also because she believed the Red Room was inhumane and violated simple human values. She was a half-hearted spy, possessing a murderous intent yet also wanting to retain a shred of kindness. When Hydra's existence was fully exposed, Natasha began to question the meaning of her existence and even developed a nihilistic attitude. So, at the last moment, she stopped Hawkeye and chose to jump off a cliff in exchange for the Soul Stone. Perhaps it was atonement, perhaps a desire to give her life some meaning. Natasha needed to know how many of her actions over the years were ordered by SHIELD, and how many were disguised aids to Hydra. Agents are indeed a complicated job, the fake captain lamented. In the past, I didn't have to distinguish between friend and foe on the battlefield, because anyone who shot at me was an enemy. The arrogance of the strong, Natasha smiled wryly. Only a master like you would give others the chance to fire the first shot. We're used to nipping danger in the bud. Yes, that's why I'm really not cut out to be an agent, the fake captain lamented. He suddenly remembered the other Steve Rogers, remembering how he had brazenly swung his sword right in front of him. Although he still couldn't understand his choice, this straightforward life was more suited to simple people like them. After several hours of driving, they finally arrived at Lehigh Barracks in New Jersey in the evening. Looking at the abandoned military camp, the fake captain was stunned for a moment, then turned to ask Natasha. Are you sure the signal source comes from here? Natasha glanced at her phone and nodded in affirmation. Yes, the signal is coming from here. The fake captain got out of the car holding a shield and said with emotion, I also came out from here. Chapter 149, Fooling, and Continuing to Fool. The two entered Camp Lehigh. The fake captain quickly discovered a warehouse that didn't conform to military construction regulations. He then used his shield to break open a lock that appeared intact, but had actually been broken once. Turning on the lights, they saw an office on the basement level. Is this SHIELD? Probably where it was first established. The fake captain looked around and saw a black and white photo of Peggy Carter on the wall, just as he remembered it. After a moment of reflection, they found the elevator hidden behind a bookshelf and cracked the code to reach the database on the lowest level. Why are all these antiques? Natasha Romanoff looked around at the old servers and shook her head. This can't be the data source. It wasn't until she saw a new adapter on the table that she, shocked, inserted the USB drive. A green light lit up on the screen, forming a bespectacled face. Steve Rogers, born in 1918. Natasha Alielazna Romanoff, born in 1984, a synthesized, robotic voice boomed. What is this? Natasha frowned. A video. I'm not a video, miss. I may not be the man Captain America captured in 1945, but I'm still me. Natasha and the fake captain suddenly saw a picture of Arnim Zola appear on another screen, and the fake captain's memory was awakened. You're the scientist who worked with Red Skull. Yes, it seems you haven't forgotten me. Zola's spirit, hidden in the data, followed his master's instructions and began his deception plan. In 1972, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Science couldn't save my body, but they felt my mind was worth saving and preserving, so they stored it in a 200,000-foot-long database. You're standing inside my brain now, so, all these years, you've been hiding in SHIELD, secretly working for Hydra, the fake captain demanded. Bucky, what did you do to Bucky back then? Hey, don't worry, Zora laughed. You think Hydra must be an organization founded by Red Skull, right? Natasha was an expert at tricking her targets into giving her information. Noticing Zora seemed eager to talk, she pressed the issue. Isn't it, regardless of their motives, whether what they said was true or false, it was always a good thing to have more information? Of course not. Zora began to divulge the information according to the script. Hydra existed as early as 1,400 years ago. The fake captain and Natasha were shocked, but they didn't dare interrupt. Do you think the Hydra is just a symbol? Do you think chop off one head and two will grow is just a propaganda slogan? No, 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 absolutely wrong. The Hydra is a real creature. The fake captain, after all, wasn't an agent. He was about to speak, but Natasha beside him quickly reached out and tugged at his sleeve, saying in an exaggerated and playful tone, wow, you shouldn't be a scientist. You should be telling stories to children on the street. I'm telling the truth. Zora was truly infuriated. It didn't sound like she was acting. Show me the evidence. Natasha remained unconvinced. Then, pictures of ancient books began to appear on the screen, depicting a monster with 9 snake heads. 1,400 years ago, A monster with 9 snake heads suddenly appeared in the Mayan civilization. It was extremely powerful, and each snake head could manipulate an element of energy. In order to defeat this monster, the Mayans concentrated all their troops to wipe it out. But when they took great pains to chop off a snake head, they found that 2 snake heads grew out from the broken end. Looking at the records in the ancient books, although Natasha was a little shocked, she still didn't quite believe it, so she smiled and teased, "If that's the case, then it should be called a 10-headed snake, not a 9-headed snake. I appreciate your humor, and I hope you can keep it up." Zora smiled and continued to fool. After cutting off the heads of the Hydra, it will indeed grow in multiples in a short period of time, but when they are away from danger, they will begin to devour each other, and eventually form a fixed 9. Finding that they could not defeat the Hydra, the Mayans quickly chose to surrender. And they began to worship it as a god. Then they discovered something even more amazing. Zora's voice suddenly rose. If you sincerely believe in the Hydra and pledge your loyalty to it, you can temporarily gain a portion of its power. The greater your loyalty, the longer you'll gain that power. Ancient texts depicted numerous figures kneeling in worship of the 9-headed monster, before 1 or 2 of them suddenly erupted in flames, water, and even lightning. The Mayans were in a frenzy. They began fervently worshipping the Hydra, hoping to gain superpowers. "That's not right," Natasha questioned. "If that were the case, the Mayans would have unified the Americas, even dominated the world, long ago. Columbus wouldn't have discovered the continent." "That's a good question," Zora praised, continuing his deception. The suddenly powerful Mayans began expanding their territory. A primitive tribe in South America discovered the Hydra, and within that tribe, a person with superpowers emerged. It was also an image from an ancient text, but this one was much clearer. It depicted a curly-haired man in a black trench coat. This person with superpowers, armed with a magical stone, arrived at a Mayan temple and battled the Hydra. Zora's voice was filled with regret as he spoke. Unfortunately, no one witnessed this battle, and the Mayans eventually discovered their gods had vanished. After the Hydra vanished, those who gained superpowers quickly lost their powers, returning to mediocrity. They were soon retaliated and killed by those they had offended. After this period of glory, Mayan civilization gradually declined, fragmenting into countless city-states and tribes, completely losing the chance to form a unified nation. It wasn't until the 16th century that the Spanish Empire destroyed the Aztec Empire, the last heir of Mayan civilization. "I didn't expect you to be so good at weaving historical stories." Natasha had memorized what she had just said, but she wasn't satisfied, continuing to goad him into further questions. It was a case of willing combat, so Zora naturally continued his deception. Although the Hydra has vanished, its legend lives on. The screen still displayed the ancient text, but the image had changed to color, appearing more recent, like a notebook or a logbook. These materials were more credible. After Columbus discovered the New World, a large number of Europeans poured into America. Some explorers found Mayan tribes hidden deep in the jungles of South America. They unexpectedly discovered that many tribes actually worshipped the same god, the Hydra. Although the murals of the Hydra in many tribes have gradually distorted due to the passage of time and poor information exchange, the 9 heads and the characteristics of 2 growing when one is cut off have been remembered by all. These tribes are scattered in the jungles of southern North America, Central America and northern South America. More and more discoveries tell these explorers a fact: the Mayans once believed in a 9-headed god. Soon, the explorers discovered even more shocking legends. As long as you believe in the Hydra, you can gain unparalleled superpowers. The Earth at that time was not like it is now. A person with superpowers who can breathe fire is definitely a god. According to the time point you mentioned, 900 years had passed when European explorers discovered these legends. The Hydra had disappeared long ago. How could they believe it? Natasha continued to ask. That's right. Without physical evidence, they'll just dismiss this as a jungle tribal myth. There are many such stories. Zora displayed 2 images on the screen. One was an ancient, hand-drawn sketch, and the other was a color photograph, bearing a number and a SHIELD watermark. Natasha's face finally paled, and the fake captain was equally shocked. The 2 stared intently at the images on the screen, as if trying to memorize every detail. "Don't worry, I still have the video." Zora smiled and continued playing the video. A cabinet made of high-strength transparent plastic appeared in the video. Inside the cabinet were the objects depicted in the photographs and hand-drawn sketches. A large black stone. SHIELD has named this stone the cornstone. If you go back and look for it, You should be able to find it in SHIELD's warehouse. In the video, the black stone suddenly liquefied, submerging the bottom of the plastic cabinet. A split second later, the liquid returned to its original state. See, Zora laughed, every time this stone liquefies, it will swallow up everything it covers, but I think it's more like a space teleportation device. Natasha suddenly realized, is this the stone that the superpowered person from that South American tribe took to fight the Hydra? So the Hydra wasn't destroyed, it was just teleported away. Look, she's learned to answer quickly. Zora pointed the camera at the fake captain and asked with a smile, Steve, do you know how to do it? Seeing this, you should understand, adventurers found this cornstone and brought it back to Europe. Their families began to invest a lot of resources and time to study this stone and the legend of the Hydra. These families gradually came to believe in the Hydra and tried to get great superpowers to dominate the Earth. Whenever the men in the family come of age, a ceremony is held. They are asked to touch stones from a bag. The bag contains black and white stones that have been polished into the same shape. If they touch the only white stone, they must walk towards the cornstone and be swallowed by it. Are they contacting the teleported Hydra? The fake captain also learned to answer quickly. Extremely correct, Zora praised him. You've finally reached the pinnacle of intelligence, so you're saying these people, these families who've spent centuries trying to bring Hydra back, are the real Hydra? Natasha glared. She could understand the madness of these quasi-religious individuals. This was the result of centuries of reckless investment, and the direct descendants of the family alone had sacrificed countless dollars. These people were completely mad to achieve their goal. Zora's scenes were finished, so he detonated the explosives Pierce had planted. You should have no regrets knowing the true face of Hydra before you die. As flames erupted, the fake captain embraced Natasha, lifted the drainage net, and jumped into the dry ditch. The explosives destroyed the entire underground base, and the superstructure collapsed, burying them both. After the explosion, the joint investigation team, having received the news, dispatched personnel to excavate. In the film, Captain America and Black Widow's escape from the underground ruins was plot-driven. In reality, with over a dozen floors of rubble crushing them, surviving would be a feat. Mortals, not robots armed with powerful weapons, couldn't possibly escape unscathed. The two unconscious men were taken to the hospital by the joint investigation team. The fake captain, in better physical condition, regained consciousness first. He immediately declared, I want to see Nick Fury. No, all registered SHIELD agents are under investigation. You should explain your situation first, said Sergei Markov, an internal auditor at SHIELD, sternly. Why would you act against orders, Captain Rogers? If you have any important information about Hydra, please disclose it to the Joint Investigation Team. We have been appointed by the World Security Council to temporarily assume command of SHIELD. Chris Cooper of the CIA quickly spoke for his men. The fake captain then realized that SHIELD was under international investigation and that Nick Fury had lost his leadership. He was silent for a moment, then said, I can share the intelligence I just received, but I require Nick Fury to be present. His position hasn't been revoked, and he has the right to know the truth. The fake captain had to live up to Nick Fury's trust. Perhaps it wasn't pure, but he believed he was a true patriot like himself. So, the fake captain wanted to return the favor. The 5 leaders of the joint investigation team gathered to discuss the matter, and the American leader naturally welcomed the opportunity. The others were silent, and Lin Hao was the first to speak out. I have no objection. All this preparation, wasn't it just for this moment? Seeing this, the leader of Bear Shield immediately followed suit. I have no objection either. The British leader looked at the 2 men from SWA and Bear Shield with surprise, confused by their sudden change of heart. Okay, I'll go inform Nick Fury now. The American leader immediately agreed, having already secured 3 votes in favor. While Natasha's physical fitness wasn't as good as the fake captain's, she was also a rigorously trained agent and quickly regained consciousness. To gain a more complete understanding of their previous encounters and the intelligence they had obtained, both were taken to the office floor of the Triskelion building reserved for the joint investigation team. Soon, a large office filled up. Investigators from the 5 major nations took their seats, with Natasha and the fake captain sitting in front of them, microphones already set up. Nick Fury, the one-eyed dragon, arrived belatedly in a black trench coat. Lin Hao glanced up at him and smiled faintly. The fish finally took the bait. 2 in 1. I won't separate them to avoid disrupting the continuous reading experience. Since I'm so considerate, please vote for me. Chapter 150: A sandwich causes a murder. With everyone gathered in the meeting room, the Fae captain and Natasha Romanoff began recounting the intelligence they had received from Arnim Zola. The audience was stunned, many in shock. They had never imagined the story of Hydra's origins would drag on so long. Can you guarantee the authenticity of this information? The American leader couldn't care less about defending his own men. They had to eliminate Hydra as quickly as possible to save face. If there was irrefutable evidence proving Hydra's origins dated back hundreds or even thousands of years, and that several established European families were behind the operation, then America would have an excuse to shirk responsibility. After all, their country was still young. I can't guarantee that. Natasha, a professional agent, shook her head. Zola seems to be deliberately letting us know this. At first, she thought it was just her skill at getting people to talk, but then she realized that Zola was being too aggressive, answering every question. It was a stretch to say he was stalling for time, as the explosives could clearly detonate at any moment. Where's the video? The British team leader asked her. Didn't he show you the video? Is the object in the video really in the SHIELD warehouse? Yes, let's take out the stone you mentioned first, the shrunk SHIELD team leader suggested. Nick Fury happened to be on the scene, and they quickly discovered the cornstone's location. While it wasn't inside the Triskelion building, it had been transported there in just a few hours using the speed of a Quinjet. Meanwhile, professional intelligence analysts and internal auditors from the 5 major powers began to bombard the Fae captain and Natasha, probing every detail. The Fae captain had never experienced such a situation before, and after half an hour, he completely lost his ability to think, becoming a mere tool, answering every question. Fortunately, everyone was only interested in the information they'd received from Zola, otherwise Lin Hao would have worried that the Fae captain would reveal his limited childhood memories. In The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Bucky revealed that Captain America wasn't a virgin, but Lin Hao had no idea who the girl was who had taken his first blood. Mental resolve is one thing, but the ability to withstand professional interrogation is another. Even a super agent like Natasha couldn't withstand the most elite intelligence analysts and interrogators from the 5 major powers. Fortunately, she didn't intend to resist and answered every question. More and more details were reconstructed, including the images Natasha had seen on Zora's screen, which were also sketched through her dictation. Among them was the image of the cornstone, as well as some adventurers' journals and logbooks Natasha had kept. That symbol looks familiar, the British intelligence officer suddenly said, picking up a sketch and pointing to a pattern carved in the logbook. It looks like a family crest. Everyone, wait a moment. I'll take a photo and send it back to the department so they can search the database. The elimination of Hydra was a consensus among the 5 major powers. Naturally, such a major undertaking, with such a rare consensus, would benefit from the resources of the 5 major powers. A moment later, the British intelligence officer read out the information sent back by MI6 to the public. The Malik family is an ancient British family, dating back to the 7th century. They've always been fascinated by archaeological exploration. However, after World War I, their assets were ruined, their family declined, and they collapsed. No, not necessarily. Jiu Yang from the SHIA cast his gaze at Chris Cooper from the CIA and chuckled. Around World War I, a large number of declining European families and the middle class immigrated to North America, and even more so during World War II. Facing the glances from the other 4 countries, Chris said in a deep voice, "I'll contact the agency right away. I'll go too." The intelligence officer from the Federal Warning Service also picked up the phone. A moment later, the 2 most powerful American agencies returned the information. Your guess was correct. Chris stared at Jiu Yang, unsure whether the SHIA already knew the information or if it was just a simple hunch. There's indeed a Malik family in Florida, and their crest is exactly the same as this. Then what are you waiting for? Go arrest them. Jiu Yang blinked. Following the pattern of their previous investigation into the Fae captain and Natasha, the 5 major powers once again formed a joint task force. However, due to a shortage of security personnel, the CIA and the Federal Warning Service dispatched additional personnel. Without notifying local personnel in Florida, the operatives departing from headquarters had their communications equipment confiscated, leaving them unaware of their mission objectives. Intelligence gathered from Zola kept the joint investigation team busy, but the 5 team leaders and a large number of civilian staff remained on the Triskelion office floor. It's lunchtime, and I see everyone's hungry. Let's eat first, Anton Vanko said at Lin Hao's suggestion. The fake captain and Natasha spoke for a long time, and the intelligence officers from the 5 nations kept pressing for details. It was indeed lunchtime. They were supposed to go to the designated dining hall, but Pierce's henchman, Sitwell, had already notified the kitchen to bring up the food. The SWAT and SHIELD agents took the lead in claiming the food. Seeing how hard they were working, and indeed awaiting a response from the 2 dispatched teams, the British gentlemen and American elite eagles didn't want to be accused of having a poor work attitude, so they obliged. People outside the conference room were to get their own food, while the important people in the conference room were naturally served by the service staff, and the food was in accordance with the dietary habits of people from different countries. Nick Fury's position was not revoked, so of course he got a share. The service staff placed a sandwich, a hamburger, a cup of Coke and a plate of pasta in front of him. Nick Fury didn't think much about it and started eating the sandwich. Natasha was not far from him, and now that she had ended the repeated questioning, she finally had the chance to eat. She just picked up the fork to eat, and when she looked up, she saw Nick Fury eating a sandwich, and she was immediately shocked. Natasha kept watching until Nick Fury finished the sandwich, and then she said loudly, "Who are you?" "You are not Nick Fury." Everyone's eyes were focused on her. Nick Fury was stunned for a moment, then smiled and replied, "Natasha, have you lost your memory?" Natasha immediately pointed to the empty plate in front of him and explained, "Fury never eats toast cut diagonally. I've observed him many times, even secretly experimented with it. He's developed this habit into an instinctive reflex. I never understood why a professional agent like him would cultivate such a distinct trait. Now it seems he might have been anticipating a situation like today." The other intelligence officers were stunned, and Lin Hao also showed a well-placed surprise. Facing the numerous stares, the Skrull disguised as Nick Fury cursed silently, "Fuck. Damn nigger, deliberately guarding against us." Seeing that he didn't react, the leaders of each country signaled to their agents, and a group quietly surrounded him. The Skrull panicked and fled towards the door. The fake captain immediately stood up, grabbed the plate in front of him, and swung it like a shield, hitting the Skrull in the back of the head. Black Brazneg fell to the ground, lying on his back. His black skin began to change, returning to green, revealing a hairless, hideous face. Pointed ears, a face and chin riven with wrinkles. Long, green hands with sharp nails. One glance and it's easy to tell, this isn't Earthling. In Captain Marvel, Nick Fury personally stated that he wouldn't eat slanted toast. In Avengers Endgame, he ate slanted toast at Hawkeye's house. In Spider-Man Far From Home, Talos, disguised as Nick Fury, called him and said he didn't know where the Avengers were, suggesting that Talos hadn't completely copied Nick Fury's memories, a clear violation of the comics' claim that he could copy all memories. I had to make it a physical reflex. P.S. I've been so busy today, it's hard to slack off. I'm planning to stay home after work and finish today's get off work in the office to avoid wasting time on the commute. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.